The steady growl of the Ranger vehicle engine was the only sound disturbing the vast silence of the Savanna Preserve. The African midday sun gilded the arid grasslands, stretching out to the horizon where lone acacia trees rose like ink blots on a canvas. Amara, the veteran ranger, gripped the steering wheel tightly. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not only from the heat, but from the heavy burden in her heart. For 10 years she had fought on this land, against fire, against drought, and worst of all, against the silent cruelty of the poachers. But recently, a massive storm had devastated the preserve, fracturing every route and disrupting the natural order. This chaos had become a golden opportunity for the criminals. Amara felt she had reached her limit. In the glove compartment, her signed letter of resignation lay ready. This patrol was the last time she would allow herself to gaze upon the majestic beauty she was about to abandon. She believed she had failed the conservation fight, that she was no longer strong enough to keep her promise to this land. I've lost, she thought, the bitter taste of defeat settling in her throat. Suddenly, a sharp cry tore through the sky. Amara slammed on the brakes, and a cloud of red dust billowed up. A gigantic, dark silhouette swooped down directly in front of the car's bonnet. It was no ordinary bird. It was Kale, the legendary martial eagle of Savanna, a bird she had only heard about in stories. Kale was diving straight down, carrying a terrifying weight in its talons, signaling that Amara's solitary farewell had been canceled by an impossible mission. Amara held her breath. She had seen many unusual things in Savanna, but the sight of Kale, the apex avian predator, landing directly on the track seemed to defy all explanation. Its magnificent dark brown plumage and sharp golden eyes looked straight at her, not with ferocity, but with an astonishing urgency. Amara was frozen. She recognized Kale. The conservation community often called it the son of the clinic. Years ago, when Kale was a weak chick with a broken wing, it had been saved by the old chief ranger, the man who had taught Amara everything at the preserve's clinic. Kale had grown up amidst ranger vehicles and kind voices, and was re-released having learned one valuable lesson. The vehicle with this symbol was a haven and a source of trust. This was a living legend, and now that legend was seeking her out. Kale took flight gently, circling above Amara in a wide arc. Then it returned and landed decisively on the car's bonnet. Amara knew what it was doing. It was claiming the vehicle as a place of safety. Then she saw the gift Kale had brought, a tiny, motionless, and exhausted lion cub covered in wounds. Amara's heart seized. This was Leo, surely a cub from the nearby pride, but it was too weak to survive on its own. Leo was not just injured, it was hunted. Kale's vigilant gaze confirmed it. The eagle subtly nudged Leo right in front of the windshield, and then it looked directly into Amara's eyes for a second, a moment of pure, non-verbal communication. Then, Kale turned its head, its dagger-sharp eyes sweeping down the road behind. The message was crystal clear. I rescued it from danger. I cannot heal the wounds. I now entrust its life to you, the human I trust. And you must go now. Amara knew she had no choice but to trust. She banished all thoughts of fatigue in the resignation letter. The absolute trust of a legendary creature had breathed new life in her fading hope. She turned the key and hit the gas. The moment the vehicle started moving, Kale remained steadfastly on the bonnet, acting as a sentinel. However, she hadn't driven far before she saw what Kale had warned her about. A massive cloud of red dust appeared on the horizon behind. It was the old moss-green Jeep she knew well, the vehicle of a notorious poaching gang, the Sharks. They had seen Kale and the Ranger vehicle, and undoubtedly, they wanted to reclaim their lost prize. The race to save Leo had officially begun, with the martial eagle Kale as the irreplaceable navigator. The red dust behind grew thicker. Amara didn't need to check the rearview mirror to know the poachers were closing in, driving recklessly over the rugged terrain. Their old Jeep had no sirens, but they certainly had weapons and ruthlessness. Amara did not stop. She couldn't. Stopping meant breaking the pact with Kale and handing Leo over to death. She accelerated the Ranger vehicle, but she had to maintain absolute control. Kale stood firm and majestic, but Leo was still a fragile life lying right on the bonnet. Amara drove, not like she was fleeing, but like she was transporting a bomb. High speed, but with absolute stability. She had to ensure the car didn't jostle too violently, avoiding further injury to Leo, while being fast enough to escape the sharks. She reached a familiar fork in the road, with a track split into two options, a wider, safer, but longer route, and a small, almost vanished trail full of loose rocks. Amara instinctively prepared to turn onto the wider road. Just then, Kale let out a piercing shriek, not a battle cry, but an urgent warning sound. It crouched down, vigorously tapping the bonnet with its beak, pointing towards the narrow track. Amara was stunned. That route was not on her standard patrol map. It was too dangerous. But she looked into Kale's eyes, eyes that had once surveyed the entire preserve from thousands of feet up. She realized that Kale was the only navigator who could see the fastest escape route, the path known only to wings. "All right, Kale," she whispered over the engine's noise. "I trust you." She turned the wheel sharply, plunging the vehicle onto the narrow track. The tires crunched hard on the gravel, and the car body shook violently. Amara felt her heart leap in her throat, but Kale remained as steady as a bronze statue. It used its body to shield much of Leo, protecting the cub from wind gusts and flying stones. Behind them, the poachers momentarily lost track, but they quickly realized Amara had chosen the risky path. They grew even more frantic, speeding like bullets. At a section in a dry valley, the road was blocked by a fallen acacia tree, a consequence of the storm. Amara was forced to slow down. Just as she was about to maneuver around it, the rusty old Jeep appeared behind her. They had caught up. The poacher's Jeep blocked the road behind Amara, forming a pincer grip. Two rough-looking men, faces full of aggression, jumped out of the car, weapons in hand. The leader, a large man in a torn hat, shouted, "Give back the prey, Ranger, or your vehicle will become scrap metal." Amara turned off the ignition, but she didn't leave the driver's seat. She knew that getting out could be misunderstood by Kale, or worse, give the poachers a chance to grab Leo or herself. She rested her hand on her flare gun, her eyes resolute. She was no longer the woman preparing to give up. She was the protector of a promise, fortified by the martial eagle's trust. "What you call prey is a dying creature," Amara retorted, her voice sharp as steel. "And this is a preserve. I have the right to shoot if you cross the line." The leader sneered. He took a step forward, heading towards the vehicle. Instantly, Kale reacted. Its battle cry echoed, more powerful than any sound Amara had ever heard. The martial eagle spread its immense wings, nearly covering the entire windshield. This was not a warning. This was a declaration of war. Its feathers bristled, the dark brown plumage glowing fierce and menacing in the sunlight. Even with Leo lying motionless beneath it, Kale was a perfect fighting machine, ready to sacrifice itself to protect the tiny creature and the human it trusted. Seeing the eagles so fearless and aggressive, the poacher hesitated, but greed prevailed. He quickly reached out, attempting to snatch Leo. It was a fatal mistake. Swift as lightning, Kale lunged. Without taking flight, it powerfully raked its dagger-sharp talons across the poacher's arm. The sound of tearing fabric and a scream of pain rang out. The poacher tumbled to the ground, clutching his bleeding arm. The other man panicked, pointing his weapon at Kale. This was the chance. Amara knew Kale couldn't fight forever without getting hurt. She released the handbrake, started the engine, and turned the steering wheel sharply. The Ranger vehicle surged into the narrow gap between the fallen tree and the ravine. In the moment of chaos, Amara saw Kale hold its ground. As the car passed, she glanced in the rearview mirror to see the poachers angrily firing, but missing their target. Both Kale and Leo were safe. Amara didn't stop until the poacher's growling engine was just a distant echo. She had escaped the confrontation, but the feeling of victory didn't come from the escape, but from the extraordinary collaboration with the legendary bird. She had fought not just for Leo, but to prove Kale's trust was meaningful. Now, the last thing she needed to do was get Leo to the clinic. Finally, the ranger vehicle reached the Savanna Preserve Clinic. The emergency lights of the clinic were the warmest light Amara had ever seen. She braked the car gently. Veterinarians and staff quickly ran out, their faces showing clear astonishment at the sight of the exhausted lion cub on the bonnet, protected by the legendary martial eagle. Amara said nothing. She looked at Kale one last time. The bird remained still, its eyes intently watching the nurses carefully carry Leo inside. Kale knew its work was finished. It had completed its mission of rescue, navigation, and protection. Now, responsibility had been transferred to the humans. Amara leaned against the car door, her breath heavy. She watched as Leo disappeared through the steel door. When she turned back, Kale was still there. The silence between them meant more than 1,000 words. Amara was grateful, and Kale knew Amara had done everything possible. She reached out her hand, gently, not daring to touch, but wanting to express her deepest gratitude. Just then, Kale took flight. There was no battle cry, no alarm call, only the gentle sound of wind tearing beneath its magnificent wings. The martial eagle circled overhead, a perfect arc above the clinic, like a final blessing for Leo and an affirmation to Amara. Then, it flew straight towards the setting sun, disappearing into the vast sky where it belonged. Kale had returned to trust and flown away. Amara watched until Kale was just a tiny dot. She returned to the vehicle, where everything had begun. She clearly saw the deep talon marks on the bonnet and the remaining dark brown feathers. It was undeniable proof of an extraordinary journey. She walked to the glove compartment. The old resignation letter was slightly crumpled. Amara picked it up. She remembered her despair just hours ago, the feeling of failure and meaninglessness. But then she recalled Kale's urgent gaze, its absolute trust in the vehicle and in her. Kale didn't choose a hero, it chose a desperate ranger. Amara slowly tore the resignation letter into small pieces. Leo was not just a lion cub saved. It was Kale's gift, a symbol of the hope nature had entrusted. Amara realized her job was not to fight against failure, but to answer this trust. She no longer felt exhausted. She felt purposeful. She would stay, not just for the preserve, but for the silent promise to her winged friend. The story of Leo and Kale is a testament that the connection between humans and the wild is real, and it is stronger than any despair. Kale placed its trust in Amara, and Amara responded with action. If this story, the eagle-winged messenger, has inspired you and brought you hope, that is the power of faith. Help us spread this powerful message to even more people. Hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss out on more inspiring, hopeful, and human stories about the survival of nature and its protectors. And more importantly, share this video with your friends and family. When you share, you are not just sharing a story. You are sharing the belief that nature still has a chance, and we as humans are still worthy of the trust that Kale bestowed. Let's spread this light of hope together. Thank you so much for watching and supporting. Sarah Jenkins quickly wiped a bead of sweat from her temple. She was standing on a bare, sandy patch where the crew had set up a temporary studio in the heart of the Masai Mara National Reserve, Kenya. Behind her, stretching to the horizon, the vibrant green savanna shimmered under the midday sun. Sarah was a veteran correspondent, having reported from war zones and humanitarian crises. She had cultivated an appearance of absolute calm under all pressure. But today, facing the live camera and this familiar wild landscape, she was confronting the biggest emotional challenge of her life. She was reading the perfect lead-in about lion conservation and rewilding efforts. Outwardly, Sarah was a professional expert, but inside, she was counting down the seconds. 5 years. 5 years, she had carried an emptiness in her chest, a piercing memory of a tiny creature that weighed less than 2 kilograms. Today, that creature, the orphan lion cub she named Keto, was a majestic, fully grown lion weighing nearly 200 kilograms, the reserve's ambassador. Everyone said that time and distance would erase an animal's memory. But as the director gave the final cue and the handler began to lead Keto into the filming area, Sarah's hand clenched her script. She hadn't seen Keto yet, but she felt a profound, unmistakable vibration, the deep, familiar chuffing sound that lions use only to greet pride mates or family. It was the sound of a greeting she hadn't heard for 5 long years. Could the wild truly forget the human who saved it? The moment of reunion, which science deemed impossible, was about to take place right here under the Masai Mara sky. Sarah arrived in Kenya as a cold, professional journalist, only pursuing high news value stories about the poaching crisis. Throughout her career, she had never owned a pet. Her personal life was completely controlled and organized, with all emotions suppressed beneath a professional veneer. That veneer completely shattered on her 8th day at the reserve. A patrol team reported a heartbreaking incident: a lioness killed by a poacher's wire snare. Beside her lay a cub, about 6 weeks old, severely dehydrated, emaciated, and refusing to leave its mother's body. Dr. Nyala Kipkamoy, the reserve's director, a kind and sharp Kenyan woman, named him Keto, meaning precious gem. Dr. Nyala explained that Keto was too small and weak. Without special 24/7 care, he wouldn't survive. The reserve was overwhelmed. By a powerful instinct Sarah couldn't explain, she volunteered for the night shift. "I can't sleep while writing my article anyway," she excused herself to Dr. Nyala. But the truth lay outside all professional logic. For the next 3 months, the animal nursery became her only world. Sarah learned to bottle feed Keto, clean up after him, and soothe him with her voice. Keto was fragile, yet possessed an astonishing power to capture a person's heart. Every night, he would curl up on her chest, his small but warm weight pressing against her, making her distinctly feel every heartbeat of life. Dr. Nyala gently explained the phenomenon of imprinting. When a lion cub loses its mother too early, it forms a deep bond with the caregiver, treating them as a blood relative of the pride. Sarah had become Keto's mother, his center, his pride. All of Sarah's professional boundaries dissolved. Keto needed her to survive. She realized she needed Keto to feel truly alive. Her 3-week assignment stretched into 3 months. She made every excuse to her newsroom in Denver. But eventually, the television network couldn't wait forever. Sarah was forced to make a devastating choice: continue the career she had painstakingly built, or give up everything for a lion she couldn't bring back to America. She knew Keto had to stay where he belonged. The morning of their separation, Sarah slipped away before dawn. She placed a deeply sleeping Keto in his den, kissing his forehead one last time. Her Maasai guide, Juma, drove her to the airstrip in silence. Juma's only farewell was, "This land has claimed you. You will return. This is not goodbye." Back in her minimalist, emotionless Denver apartment, Sarah still woke up with a sense of emptiness in her chest. She had won an Emmy Award for her report, but she had lost the most genuine connection of her life. She knew that a piece of her heart would forever remain under the Masai Mara sky with that lion cub. 5 years passed, marked by booming career success and an unfillable void in Sarah's heart. She won another Emmy, was promoted to a top international correspondent position, and constantly traveled the world. But wherever she was, she felt spiritually tied to the golden grasslands of Kenya. Her only lifeline was the monthly emails from Dr. Nyala. The attached photos became Sarah's rhythm of life. She watched Keto grow through her computer screen, from a fluffy cub into a majestic beast with a fiery, honey-colored mane. Keto, being hand-raised from birth, was too habituated to be released into the wild. Instead, he became the reserve's ambassador. Keto was calm and gentle with tourists and handlers, except for one haunting detail Dr. Nyala shared. Whenever American visitors arrive, especially women, Nyala wrote, Keto becomes agitated. He paces, he calls out, and he searches every face with intense, desperate eyes. We believe he is still looking for you. That information was both Sarah's comfort and her biggest fear. She had always told herself that an animal's memory wasn't as durable as a human's.
The data is conclusive.
The results are definitive.
Every expert she
We are
consulted
seeing the
affirmed
expected
this.
outcome.
Returning now, after 5 years, risked proving that the bond she cherished was merely a unilateral illusion. Yet, it was the desperate searching look in Keto's eyes that Dr. Nyala described that ultimately motivated her. Sarah submitted a proposal for a live series of reports on great cat conservation in East Africa, finally having a legitimate reason to return to the land that had stolen a piece of her heart. She spent the first 2 weeks filming, trying to maintain a professional distance from Keto's area. Until the 15th day, Dr. Nyala called. "Are you going to fly home without seeing him? I need you to understand one thing. He has never stopped looking for you." The truth was clear. Sarah made her final decision. She would film a live segment featuring Keto, the ambassador lion. She requested that Dr. Nyala keep the animal's identity a secret, even from her, to ensure her reaction was genuine and unscripted. She wanted the world to witness the truth, that love transcends species boundaries and defies time. She needed Keto to know that after 5 long years, she had returned and had never forgotten him. Sarah was speaking about the importance of great predator conservation, her voice professional and measured. She tried to maintain focus on the camera, ignoring the enormous transport crate tucked away behind the crew, where the ambassador lion awaited. She reminded herself, remember the lesson. Be a professional. After a brief introduction by Dr. Nyala about the ambassador program, the broadcast director gave the signal. The transport crate door opened. The first thing that reached Sarah was not an image, but a sound. Not a threatening growl, but a deep, continuous chuffing. The intimate communication lions used to express welcome and friend recognition. The sound cut through all the audio filters, going straight into Sarah's mind, interrupting the words on her script. The professional in her melted into a choked gasp. Keto did not hesitate. He completely ignored the handler, the cameras, and the strange lights. He crossed the hot, sandy patch in just a few strides, his gaze fixed on the woman standing behind the broadcast table. He surged toward the low wooden barrier, the boundary between the animal area and the filming location, not with aggression, but with desperate propulsion. His familiar chuffing rang out nonstop, broadcast live to millions. Sarah spun around, forgetting the camera, forgetting the script. She whispered the only name this creature would understand, Keto. The professional reporter was gone, replaced by the mother overwhelmed by regret. Keto pressed his forehead against Sarah's hand, letting out a satisfied rumble. "He remembers me," Sarah choked out, her whole body trembling with emotion. "He truly remembers me." The world witnessed, not a typical conservation report, but an act of eternal love, defying all scientific laws, unfolding on the hot, sandy patch of the Masai Mara, with the green savanna as its witness. Dr. Nyala Kipkamoy stepped forward, her eyes also red-rimmed, but her voice firm as she explained this miraculous moment to millions of viewers. What you are witnessing goes beyond all scientific knowledge. Keto has imprinted on the single human who represented safety, warmth, and life. He has never forgotten his pride. She confirmed that Keto had indeed searched for Sarah's face every time an American visitor appeared. This was not just a story, but living proof of the depth of animal emotion. Sarah, now calmer but radiating a new serenity, looked directly into the camera. "This moment," she said, her voice filled with emotion yet firm, "is more powerful than any poaching statistic. It shows that conservation is not just about protecting a species. It's about honoring the individual memory, the individual bond, and the individual capacity for love of every creature." This was the message she had yearned to convey for 5 years. Love is the most powerful solution. Sarah officially announced her decision to permanently transfer her assignment from the New York headquarters to the Africa Bureau. But more importantly, she revealed the solution. She and the television network would collaborate to launch a fundraising initiative to build a new, permanently expanded and enriched living area dedicated to ambassador lions like Keto, who couldn't be released into the wild. "I had to leave him once for my career," Sarah explained. "I won't leave him again. My new life is here, serving this connection and finding humane solutions for all the other Ketos." This is the story that opens up hope for the possibility of connection between humans and the wild world. If you also believe in these wondrous bonds and want to continue following the humane solutions we are striving to implement in Africa, please click the subscribe button now and turn on notifications. We will bring you the most authentic, moving footage from the Masai Mara Reserve. If this moment of catharsis brought you faith, stand with us. This is a story about belief, the belief that love always finds a way. Share this video to remind the world that memory, loyalty, and love are boundless. We need your help to honor these stories.
Please help us protect this incredible legacy for the future.
The blazing late morning sun beat down on the Serengeti National Park, gilding the vast savanna and bringing an unyielding, intense heat. Amidst the endless, dry grass, we see the image of two lion cubs lying close together. One, named Kale, has a radiant tawny coat, the color of the land itself. The other, Aura, is a rare albino individual, pristine white, almost glowing against the scorched gold, a stark contrast and a symbol of her extreme fragility. Kale nudged her gently with his nose, but Aura remained still, her breathing shallow and ragged. Meanwhile, the whispering Maine pride, led by the formidable lioness Serafina, was moving slowly toward the horizon where dwindling water sources could be found. Serafina let out a mournful, low call, a sound that echoed the harsh reality of the jungle law. Those severely ill must be left behind. Zia, Kale's mother, looked back at her son, her eyes full of pain before reluctantly following the pride. But Kale did not. He stood up, small amidst the vastness, and resolutely turned his back on his family. He gently laid down beside Aura, placing his body between his friend and the harsh world. In this kingdom, where every action is dictated by the instinct of survival, can pure, unconditional loyalty defy the cruel law of nature? This is not just a story of survival. It is a testament to love, courage, and the silent vow of a small heart, witnessed under the African sun. Join us as we explore the true meaning of valor and dedication. Kale had made his choice, and immediately he faced the terrifying reality: absolute solitude on the abandoned savanna. The midday sun climbed to its zenith, pouring down a dreadful heat. Kale, though only a cub, instinctively positioned his small, heating body to cast a meager shadow over Aura's white, sensitive skin. Her lack of pigment made her particularly vulnerable to the scorching sun. Kale gently and repeatedly licked his friend's fur, a silent reassurance. The vastness of the Serengeti, usually a place of life, now became an isolating expanse. Hunger and thirst began to torment Kale. He stood up restlessly, taking a few steps toward the shimmering horizon, where the scent of the pride still lingered on the wind. Instinct told him to follow, to find food, to find water, to choose survival. But every time he turned his back, his eyes caught the image of Aura lying motionless. His small heart had made a different decision. He turned back and lay down. Loyalty had triumphed over instinct. Kale maintained a high state of vigilance. He not only had to fight his own hunger and thirst, but also cope with the severity of the environment. He gently nudged Aura with his head, trying to encourage her to move even slightly, a small sign of life. The scorching hours passed heavily in silence. Exhaustion gradually set in, but Kale knew he could not sleep. Suddenly, a stealthy, gray figure appeared. It was a cunning jackal, scenting the weakness and solitude of the two cubs. It moved low through the tall grass, its sly eyes constantly fixed on Aura, the most vulnerable individual. Kale recognized the danger immediately. His entire body tensed. His sparse, undeveloped mane bristled. He let out a roar, still cub-like but full of power, a sound learned from the adult males he often observed. He charged a short distance, swatting at the ground, firmly placing himself between the predator and Aura. Kale was small, exhausted, and dehydrated, but the fierce anger of a protector made the opportunistic jackal hesitate. It paused, then quickly slunk into the bushes, giving up in the face of this unexpected, fierce defense. The danger had passed, but Kale was completely drained. He trembled and lay softly beside Aura, his head resting near hers, maintaining his tireless vigil. This long, silent, scorching afternoon was the most moving testament to his sacrifice, a silent promise that he would not abandon his friend. This bond had truly transcended all known laws of nature. Hours later, as the sun began to dip toward the west, the harsh light mellowing into a soft orange hue, a subtle vibration cut through the stillness and exhaustion. Dr. Elias Vance, a seasoned veterinarian with the Serengeti Wildlife Rescue Organization, was conducting his late afternoon patrol. He was not tracking prey or migration. His mission was to seek out individuals in need of help. Dr. Vance's binoculars caught an unusual and heartbreaking sight. A tawny cub standing guard fiercely beside a white form, almost motionless. Aura, the albino lion cub, with her unique coat color, had become a clear focal point, a distress signal in the savannah. He immediately recognized this as a critical medical and survival emergency. Kale had gone almost 2 days without food or water. Dr. Vance quickly drove his specialized vehicle to a safe distance, then called his team for immediate backup. He emphasized the extreme sensitivity of the situation. Kale was in a state of high stress, instinctively defensive. A rough intervention could cause Kale to panic or even cause harm. This had to be a rescue built on trust. Moving with maximum composure and caution, Dr. Vance placed a small bucket of fresh water on the ground, about 10 meters from Kale, then retreated to his vehicle. He moved further away, allowing the desperate cub some privacy. Kale, exhausted and tormented by thirst, stood up. He looked at the water, then back at Aura, then at the doctor's vehicle. The internal struggle was evident. Loyalty held him back, but the instinct for survival urged him on. Finally, thirst won. Kale rushed forward, drinking quickly and almost greedily. Yet his eyes never left Aura, always vigilant. After drinking, a miracle occurred. Kale did not immediately lie down. He returned, his nose still wet. He gently licked Aura's lips, a gesture that was clumsy, naive, yet full of humanity, attempting to share the precious water. Dr. Vance, witnessing this voluntary act of sharing, understood that Kale had lowered his guard, or at least, Kale had placed his trust in the action. Aura's salvation had to include Kale. When the full rescue team arrived, they proceeded carefully and prepared the necessary medical equipment. Dr. Vance decided to use a mild, fast-acting sedative on Kale. The dose was enough to calm Kale, prevent panic, but not enough to put him to sleep. It was crucial that Kale could still perceive his surroundings. They carefully placed Aura onto a specialized medical stretcher first, stabilized her, and began an immediate 4-fluid drip. Kale was then secured and always positioned where he could see Aura receiving care. Their bond had to be kept intact throughout this traumatic rescue journey. A glimmer of hope had appeared. The rescue vehicle sped along the dirt tracks, carrying the 2 small lives toward the Serengeti Haven Intensive Care Center. Inside the vehicle, Aura was placed on a specialized warming mat and connected to oxygen and N4 system. She was fighting for her life. Upon arrival at the treatment area, Aura was immediately moved into the emergency care room. Kale, more alert after the mild sedative, was placed in an adjacent recovery cage. The 2 cubs were separated by a thick, transparent, clean glass panel, allowing Kale to see all the medical activity around Aura. Despite being dazed, Kale had only one focus: Aura. He staggered toward the glass, his eyes locked on his friend lying motionless on the examination table.
Blood
Dr.
pressure is
Vance
unstable.
and his team worked tirelessly. The diagnosis confirmed Aura had a severe respiratory tract infection along with a dangerously high fever. Kale leaned against the cold glass, letting out distressed, worried whimpers, a sound different from the earlier defiant roar, now a cry of fear and helplessness. Suddenly, an alarm on Aura's monitoring screen blared. Her temperature spiked dramatically, and her small body began to convulse, a dangerous reaction due to the excessive fever. Dr. Vance and the nurses immediately rushed in, using every measure, including cold compresses and specific medication, to try and stabilize her body temperature. Cale watched the crisis unfold through the glass. He was genuinely panicked. His small roar became urgent, desperate, and he violently rammed his shoulder into the glass, trying to penetrate the invisible barrier to get to his friend. Dr. Vance, who had witnessed countless life and death moments in nature, recognized the extraordinary power of this bond. He understood that Cale was not just an emotional factor. He might be the medicine that science could not provide. Going against strict infection control protocols, he made a bold decision. He ordered the connecting door to be opened, gently guiding Cale into the treatment room. The moment Cale entered, all his panic vanished. He calmly approached Aura, navigating around the 4 lines and monitoring equipment. He was neither hyperactive nor disruptive. Cale simply rested his head beside Aura's and began to emit a deep, continuous purr. It was the sound of safety, of home, of a friendship that never abandoned. Aura, though still deeply unconscious, seemed to respond to the familiar vibration and warmth with a very slight movement of her head. This moment confirmed what the medical team was witnessing. Friendship was an integral part of the healing process. Cale's gentle intervention provided the necessary emotional stability, giving Aura's small body extra strength to fight the illness. Cale's warm purr had worked its magic. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight streamed through the treatment room window, Aura's high fever finally broke, and her body temperature stabilized. Cale was still lying beside her, his purr now rhythmic and softer. Then, the miracle happened. Aura's eyelids fluttered open. Her pale blue eyes, unique and beautiful, slowly focused. The first thing she saw was Cale resting his head next to hers. She tried to utter a small, weak but clear sound, a cry of recognition. Cale lifted his head, nudged her gently, and licked her face, a tender moment of reunion that moved even the most experienced medical team. From that moment, Aura's recovery progressed astonishingly fast. Cale was allowed to stay, becoming the constant purring nurse beside his friend. Aura, for the first time in days, accepted a little warm milk. Cale also ate more enthusiastically, but always stayed close to Aura, his mind focused on his best friend. Weeks passed in a specially designed, spacious recovery area. The 2 cubs frolicked in the sun, healthier and stronger than ever. Aura's white coat was radiant, and Cale had grown sturdier. Then, the day of return arrived. Dr. Vance's team had tracked and located the Whispering main pride about 50 kilometers away. The 2 cubs were carefully placed into a transport vehicle. When released onto a high ridge overlooking the pride's feeding area, Cale and Aura stood together, sniffing the familiar air. After a moment of hesitation, they began to walk down the hill, side by side, just as they had faced death together. It was Serafina, the lead lioness, who spotted them first. She let out a huge, welcoming roar, bringing the entire pride to a halt. Then, Zia, Cale's mother, and the other lionesses rushed toward them. The reunion was emotional, a flurry of head rubs, licks, and warm purrs. Cale was embraced by his mother, but he stood close to Aura, and the entire pride encircled both of them, accepting the frail albino cub and the brave friend who had saved her. This is the true law of nature. Loyalty, connection, and unconditional love possess a strength greater than any fawn or claw. Cale's courageous choice not only brought life back to Aura, but also reinforced the spirit and strength of the entire pride. True family is not always defined by blood, but by the love forged in the most difficult choices. If you believe in the incredible power of connection and second chances, click the link in the description to support Dr. Vance and the Serengeti Wildlife Rescue Organization. Your contribution ensures they can continue to provide gentle solutions and witness more extraordinary miracles like Cale and Aura. Subscribe to our channel for more stories of hope from the wild. Life on the African savanna is overwhelming, but also incredibly harsh. The bright sun that warms can also scorch the earth, and the beauty of the landscape conceals an unforgiving rule of survival. As conservation experts, they often told themselves not to interfere with nature's design, accepting it as the circle of life and death. But what happens when that circle seems to lead straight to an injustice, a cruelty that human reason cannot accept? That was the question that hammered into Jake Miller's mind as he stood on the dusty riverbank that morning. Jake was on patrol with Tracker, his loyal and experienced German Shepherd, when they spotted a terrifying movement. A tiny lion cub, recently separated from its pride, was cornered. It was surrounded by 7 aggressive and efficient predators, a pack of African wild dogs. And behind them, the silent, dark threat of a massive crocodile. This wasn't a fair fight. It was a slow, agonizing countdown to certain death. For a moment, his professional rationale told Jake to stand down. But his heart knew they had to find a way. They had to create a miracle. Right then and there, Jake made a silent promise to Aki, the name he gave the cub, that he deserved a chance. And they would fight for that slim chance of survival. Watching Aki, the poor cub, through the binoculars was agonizing. His entire body was a mixture of sheer terror and a desperate pretense of bravery, expressed through tiny, inadequate growls that were no threat to anyone, especially the wild dog pack. The dogs knew he was alone. He was cornered. The dreadful silence, broken only by the gentle lapping of the water and the dry sniffing of the dogs, was the heaviest feeling Jake had ever experienced. It was the silence of a predetermined death. Jake's heart was heavy. Tracker, the faithful German Shepherd, was tense beside him, mirroring his owner's intense anxiety. Tracker was trained for rescue and protection, but this situation was outside their normal mandate. This was a chaotic 3-way battlefield. The dogs on the bank, the perilous river, and Aki trapped in between. Jake knew that if he simply charged in, Tracker would become the next target. If he moved too fast, Aki would panic and rush toward the water, where the crocodile silently waited. His professional responsibility weighed on Jake like a lead burden. Every second he hesitated, Aki's chance of survival diminished. But Jake had to clearly see the structure of the danger. He needed to find a weak link in this brutal chain of life and death. The river was that weak link. The river brought the only unpredictable element. The wild dogs were too predictable. They followed their hunting instinct. And the crocodile? It followed chaos. Jake took a deep breath. He told himself, if we interfere, we have to force the rules of nature to work for us. He needed an external force. That was when he decided to leverage the river's most dangerous predator. It was the riskiest gamble of his career. He pulled out the loudest noise-making device he had, a specialized air horn. He whispered to Tracker, "Stay calm, boy. Watch the water." Jake didn't just intend to scare off the dogs. He wanted to redirect their attention just long enough to create confusion for the crocodile. That moment, standing there, deciding to inject human compassion into the brutal wilderness, was a soul-searching one. This action was not about saving a species. It was about honoring the inherent value of a small life under threat. It was the silent promise Jake had made to Aki. You deserve a chance, and we will fight for it, despite the risk. Jake's patience paid off when he saw the crocodile's gaze shift from silent to vigilant at the increasing tension from the dog pack. Jake knew the time for action had come, and there would be no turning back. He and Tracker exchanged a final look, a silent nod replacing all preparation. They were ready to break the deadly silence. Jake inhaled, focusing every sense on the moment about to unfold. He aimed the air horn away from Aki's position and pressed the button. The sound wasn't just loud. It was unnatural, sharp, tearing the morning silence. The wild dog pack immediately recoiled, ears flat, their aggression momentarily broken by confusion. But Jake's primary target wasn't the dogs. The sudden, unusual sound was the signal the crocodile had been waiting for. It was the disruption that broke the predictable rhythm of the riverbank. Everything happened faster than any description could capture. The massive crocodile, a creature of pure, ancient reflex, sensed the panic in the dogs and the movement near the water's edge. With a terrifying lunge, it exploded from the water, aiming not for Aki, but for the largest and closest moving target, a lead wild dog. A lightning-fast snap, a horrifying, wet sound, and the dog vanished, pulled beneath the muddy surface in a swirl of sediment. The remaining wild dogs scattered in primal terror. Their hunting formation was shattered by the brutal intervention of the river. This was Jake's golden opportunity, a moment of absolute chaos where natural threats were inadvertently neutralizing each other. Jake knew this window would last only seconds, maybe less. "Tracker, go! Hold the line!" Jake yelled. He didn't send Tracker in a fight, but to control the space. The brave dog charged forward, its bark now a high, fierce warning. The dog wasn't aggressive in a predatory sense, but its trained presence and power quickly redirected the fear of the dissolving wild dog pack. Tracker's ferocity forced them to retreat further from the danger zone, creating a clear path for Jake. Jake sprinted forward, low to the ground, rushing through where the water still churned from the crocodile's attack. Aki stood motionless, utterly terrified, his eyes fixated on the void where the dog had just disappeared. Jake gently but quickly scooped him up. Aki was lighter than he expected, his whole body shaking violently. He felt the small, rapid heartbeat of the cub pressed against his chest. The remaining wild dogs, still wary of the massive crocodile and faced with the resolute boundary Tracker had established, began to retreat into the bushes, their hunt broken by a force they could not contend with. The entire sequence, from the air horn to Aki being safe in Jake's arms, likely lasted no more than 30 seconds. But in those seconds, an entire ecosystem shifted, and a life was saved through calculated chaos and perfect coordination. Jake held Aki close and called out, "Tracker, retreat." Jake and Tracker withdrew from the riverbank together. The crocodile submerged, the water returning to silence. This silence was more terrifying than the attack, prompting Jake and Tracker to run as fast as they could away from the forbidden water. He gave his four-legged friend a proud pat, a silent thank you for his courage and loyalty. Once safely back in the patrol vehicle, the adrenaline in Jake's body faded, leaving behind trembling and exhaustion. Aki was carefully placed in a transport crate, his whole body curled up in shock. Tracker lay next to the crate, occasionally nudging the wire mesh, emitting soft whines, a silent way of offering comfort. They had successfully intervened, but the mission wasn't over. Saving a wildlife doesn't mean taking it home. It means giving it the necessary tools to return to the wild, stronger. Jake conducted an initial check. Aki was dehydrated, had a few minor scratches, and was clearly in deep psychological shock. They needed to quickly transport him to the nearest field rehabilitation center. This was the core of Jake's work. It wasn't about turning wildlife into pets. It was about becoming a silent, stabilizing force when a creature was caught in an impossible situation. They were the safety net, their second chance. It didn't take them long to get Aki to the center. The first few days were critical. Aki was provided a quiet space, specialized veterinary care, and a dedicated diet to combat dehydration and exhaustion. However, true healing wasn't just physical, it was mental. The cub needed to regain his confidence, to reclaim the fierce heart of a lion. This is where the gentle solution philosophy was applied. They didn't keep Aki isolated. Instead, they worked to integrate him with other rescued lion cubs of similar age, temporarily creating a small pride. This social structure allowed Aki to relearn the complex, subtle language of lion behavior. How to stalk, how to pounce, how to establish hierarchy. They did this behind tall fences and through one-way glass, minimizing human contact, ensuring he never became accustomed to their presence. Every effort was directed toward one goal: reintegration into nature. This work is not funded by massive government budgets, but by people like you, people who believe every life has value, even if it's a cub rescued from the jaws of both a dog pack and a crocodile. Jake and his team believe conservation is a global act of compassion, an act of individual rescue. It is the silent hope that guides their hands every day, focusing on connection, rehabilitation, and ultimately, freedom. They are building a future where Aki can roar without the need for human protection or the luck of a crocodile attack. Months passed. Aki grew stronger, fiercer, and more beautiful. The tiny growl of the past was now a powerful, commanding sound. His eyes, once filled with terror, now shone with the brilliant, wild confidence of a young lion finding his place in the world. The image of the desperate cub, cornered by the water's edge, was completely replaced by the reality of a magnificent creature, ready to face the challenges of his true home. Release day is always bittersweet. It is the moment they achieve success, and also the moment they must say goodbye. Watching Aki bound out of the transport crate and disappear into the tall grass, merging with a carefully selected new pride, was the highest emotional reward. It was confirmation that the risk, the calculated chaos they embraced on the riverbank that day, was entirely worth it. This story is not just about a lion cub. It is about what happens when humans refuse to accept a hopeless scenario. It is a reminder that even when faced with overwhelming odds, from a vicious hunting pack to a silent, terrifying crocodile, there is always a way to intervene, to connect, and to create a gentle, effective solution. We are called to be the unexpected force for good in all chaos. After Aki was released, Jake and Tracker sat quietly watching. Tracker rested his head on Jake's shoulder, both sharing the silent moment of victory. They save a life, but more importantly, they reaffirmed their belief in compassion. Their work is a series of acts of trust. Trust in nature's resilience, trust in the capacity for healing, and trust in humanity's ability to do what is right. If Aki's story has brought you a spark of hope, a moment of connection with the great wild world, please join us. We create these videos to bring light, belief, and stories of survival. Please click the subscribe button and the notification bell below. Your participation in this community helps us continue to create meaningful content, follow the journeys of Aki and other creatures, and share gentle conservation solutions. Please share this story with your friends, comment your thoughts on Tracker's bravery, and witness the next silent miracles with us. Welcome to the Serengeti National Reserve, the heart of Africa, where life and instinct reign supreme on the endless plains. This story unfolds at a specialized rescue center dedicated to second chances in the great wild. Here, the staff had poured their efforts into caring for Amara, a majestic lioness rescued from a harrowing situation on the Serengeti grasslands. After months of careful recovery, Amara gave birth to two beautiful cubs, Leo and Zara. It was a moment the entire center staff had been waiting for, a powerful symbol of healing and new hope for the lion population. However, the traumatic past had taken a heavy toll on Amara. For 3 long, agonizing days, her maternal instincts were completely paralyzed. Amara was exhausted, stressed, and unable to care for or nourish her 2 young offspring. The cubs, too weak to cry out, were slowly fading. Their survival hinged entirely on the decision for human intervention. The staff faced an impossible choice: to submit to the harsh natural law of the Serengeti or to attempt a bold solution, risking everything to save them. How could they possibly replace the natural bond and nourishment of a lion mother in the heart of Africa? They understood that genuine connection often emerges in the most unexpected places. The reserve needed to find motherhood where it was least anticipated. Could love transcend biological barriers and predatory instincts to save these 2 tiny lives? The decision to intervene was made immediately, fueled by the ticking biological clock of Leo and Zara. The 2 cubs, now just bundles of soft fur, were severely malnourished. The center's veterinarians rushed them to the clinic, stabilizing their bodies with special, nutrient-rich milk formulas. However, they knew that the long-term prognosis was bleak. Without the social bonding and unique nourishment of a true mother, they were at high risk for severe developmental issues. The center needed a living wet nurse, a gentle but urgent solution, and time was running out. After countless desperate calls to communities and families living near the reserve, a miracle arrived. A kind family offered to lend Kira, an 8-year-old German Shepherd. Kira was a gentle, experienced mother who had just weaned her own litter, ensuring she had a ready supply of quality milk. Nutritionally, dog milk is nearly perfect for lion cubs, but the behavioral risks were immense. Kira, like most dogs, had an innate wariness of large cats, and introducing her to 2 tiny predators was an incredibly high-stakes gamble. The atmosphere in the care unit was tense, thick with anxiety as the staff conducted the historic meeting. The entire team fell silent, holding their breath. Kira, a strong and intelligent dog, cautiously approached the small enclosure. She sniffed inquisitively, her ears perked, her body slightly tense. Leo and Zara, driven by hunger and the instinct to seek warmth, let out weak, desperate whimpers. And then a magical moment occurred, bringing tears to the eyes of those watching. Kira did not bark, nor did she retreat. Instead, her instinct overcame the barrier of species. She gently lay down, allowing the 2 tiny predators to crawl towards her. The small, soft suckling sounds of the 2 cubs filled the air, like the sound of hope prevailing. Everyone let out a collective sigh of relief. For the next month, Kira became their entire world. She was not just a wet nurse, but also a caregiver and protector. She licked them with maternal tenderness, warming them with her body through the cold nights of plains. The image of a German shepherd meticulously grooming and guarding lion cubs became a vivid testament to the truth. Love, empathy, and connection are universal languages, requiring no shared blood or species. This was a gentle solution to a seemingly insurmountable problem, proving that sometimes the greatest strength lies in a kind and unbiased heart. Kira was not just a foster mother. She was a lifeline, a guardian angel in brown and black fur. Thanks to Kira, the 2 little lives had a solid start, overcoming the gloomiest predictions and growing up healthy under loving care. Under Kira's unwavering and loving care, Leo and Zara not only survived but thrived astonishingly. The staff at the rescue center witnessed a heartwarming sight. The 2 cubs grew stronger daily, their weight steadily increasing, and their coordination visibly improving. They played innocently with each other, then nestled against Kira to nurse and find warmth. This bond was a pure joy, a unique family portrait admired by the entire reserve, a testament to the extraordinary nature of interspecies motherhood. As time passed, Kira was entirely the patient, dedicated mother, ensuring her adopted children had the most solid foundation for a life in the wild. However, alongside their booming growth came a bitter and undeniable reality. Within just a few weeks, the lion instinct began to emerge. Leo and Zara's play bites became stronger. Their once tiny claws were now sharp and formidable, and their canine teeth were rapidly becoming weapons. Their bodies were quickly becoming too large and dangerous for Kira. The staff understood that no matter how deep the love, this connection had to end. Kira's safety and the future of Leo and Zara, 2 lions who needed to learn to become independent predators, were the top priorities. The decision to separate them, though painful, was an act of great love. The team recognized that sometimes true love means letting go, allowing those you care for to grow and bravely become the best version of themselves. The day of separation was one of the quietest and most difficult at the center. Kira, with a mother's keen intuition, seemed to sense the imminent change. She became restless, her eyes filled with sadness, refusing to leave her cub's side even for a moment. The farewell was quiet, gentle, but
Thank you for everything.
Kira was let out first. She was hugged and thanked by the staff like a hero, then lovingly reunited with her human family. Concurrently, Leo and Zara were moved to a larger enclosure, specifically designed to encourage their innate wild lion behaviors. The innocent cubs watched Kira disappear, perhaps not understanding the sudden absence. But the confidence and strength they possessed were a testament to the unconditional motherhood Kira had gifted them. Kira's silent sacrifice had fulfilled its mission. She returned to her family life, while Leo and Zara continued to grow, exhibiting the strength and majesty of young lions on the plains. The conservation staff celebrated Kira's courage and compassion, but were also haunted by a question. Would these two mighty beings carry the memory of their special foster mother's gentle, borderless love into their wild lives? Or would the fierce instinct of the wild erase it all? 2 years flew by like a gust of wind on the Serengeti plains. Leo and Zara were no longer helpless cubs. They had become majestic, powerful adult creatures. Leo wore the growing mantle of a powerful young king. Zara was a vigilant, agile hunter. They were entirely wild in their instincts, displaying the superior strength of apex predators. Their growth was a testament to the success of the rescue center, and especially to Kira's invaluable contribution. However, for the staff, the sight of these two large, fierce lions was always linked to a persistent question. When Leo instinctively stalked prey, or when Zara snarled to defend territory, did they still retain the memory of their interspecies foster mother's warmth and gentleness? Or had the harsh laws of the wild completely erased that strange bond of their infancy? The center director, a seasoned veteran who had witnessed Kira's initial miracle, felt a strong urge to find the answer. He proposed a bold and risky suggestion: to invite Kira's family back to the reserve for a reunion. The idea immediately met with deep concern and internal debate. Bringing a gentle house dog back into contact with two aggressive adult lions was an unprecedented gamble. Scientifically and logically, the outcome seemed clear. Adult lions would only see prey or an intruder to be eliminated. But the director bet on the power of connection, the belief that the depth of the initial love could overcome survival instinct. This reunion was not just a test of animal memory, but a profound experiment in human faith in interspecies motherhood. If the lions attacked, it would prove instinct was absolute and they had failed. If they remembered, it would prove that love is indelible and a boundless force. With absolute caution, the staff prepared the large enclosure, setting up strict safety measures. They thoroughly checked every worst-case scenario. But in the heart of each person, there was a faint hope for the extraordinary. On the day Kira and her family arrived, the atmosphere at Serengeti was stretched taut, ready to witness the answer to the question that had obsessed them for 2 years. The wait was a journey filled with tension, a silent battle between reason and emotion, between science and faith. Finally, Kira and her family arrived. The brave dog's presence created a new wave of tension near the enclosure. Kira, though calm, was aware of the two gigantic, majestic creatures waiting. Leo and Zara, sensing something strange and yet familiar, approached the gate with a slow, cautious gait, the posture of predators assessing a target. The moment the gate opened and Kira walked in, every observing staff member held their breath, hearts pounding, ready to activate emergency intervention measures. In a terrifying moment of silence, the two massive lions, weighing hundreds of kilograms, strode closer to the German Shepherd. They were many times larger than Kira. Reason told everyone that disaster was imminent. But then, the miracle appeared, making the world seemingly stop. When Leo and Zara were just a few steps from Kira, the predatory glare suddenly dissolved. Instead, a soft expression, like a distant memory flooding back, appeared on their faces. Leo, the large male lion, was the first to act. Instead of roaring or pouncing, he lowered his majestic head and began to rub against Kira, a gentle, familiar gesture a cub uses to show affection to its mother. Zara followed suit, and immediately after, in a sight that overwhelmed the emotions of the witnesses, both adult lions laid down next to Kira, as if they felt like the small cubs they once were. Kira reacted instantly too. Her tail began to wag gently, and she started licking the large snouts of her adopted children, exactly as she had 2 years ago. This scene touched the depths of everyone's heart. Tears streamed down the faces of the seasoned conservation staff. This was not a mere event. It was irrefutable proof that the love a mother gives in the early days of life is an indelible bond, transcending instinct, species, and time. The lion, a creature symbolizing wild strength, had bowed to gentle motherhood. The story of Kira, Leo, and Zara is more than just a captivating anecdote. It is a powerful message to the world. It is the belief that emotional connection is primordial, something that can cross all biological boundaries. It is a gentle solution proving that empathy and compassion can change destiny and rewrite harsh rules. We need more organizations like this rescue center in Serengeti that operate not just on science, but on love and absolute faith in the ability of all creatures to connect. If this story has touched your heart, and if you believe in the power of this connection, please consider supporting wildlife rescue and rehabilitation efforts. Your generosity provides the resources for these gentle solutions, helping to save lives and write new, miraculous chapters of hope. Share this story, spread the faith, and help us continue to create families without borders. Remember, true love always wins, even on the wildest plains of the Serengeti. This is a story of two souls, both facing an unbearable stillness right at the heart of the wild. Meet Leo, a white lion cub, a symbol of majesty and rarity. But Leo was born into darkness, a perpetual veil over his world. Blind from birth due to a defect, he was rejected by his pride. Leo was brought to the White Lion Reserve, where he found safety, but lacked the necessary connection and love. He refused to nurse. He didn't want to play. He simply faded, a pale shadow against the dirt, a tiny creature giving up on life before it truly began. Fear and loneliness cut deep into his young spirit. The dedicated caretakers did everything they could to keep him going, but they realized Leo was slowly dying of emotional pain. And here's Max, a magnificent German shepherd who used to be the most vigilant and proactive dog at the reserve, dedicated to his guard duties. But Max was struggling too. After losing his handler, his best friend, in an accident, Max became distant, self-isolated, and refused to engage in any activities. Two creatures, vastly different, yet bound by the same profound grief and solitude. The entire reserve knew something had to be tried. No one expected the moment they met to change everything so magically. They placed all their fragile hope on something that seemed impossible. For weeks, Leo survived only through the dedication of the veterinary team. But love and formula could only go so far when the spirit was broken. Dr. Lena Hansen, the lead veterinarian, understood that Leo was not in physical pain. He was suffering emotionally. He is grieving a life not yet fully lived, she often said. The constant disorientation of his blindness made him fear movement, fear touch. Leo needed an anchor in his perpetual night. The idea of introducing Max came from desperation, but also from a deep understanding of animal empathy. Max, despite his pain from losing his companion, possessed an immense capacity for nurturing. At his core, he was a protector, but a German shepherd and a lion cub? It was a huge risk. Lions are predatory by instinct. Max was a formidable guard dog. Everyone feared conflict, but they feared losing Leo more. The first introduction was conducted very carefully through a mesh fence. Leo, hearing a new scent and sound, immediately hissed and retreated, stumbling into the wall. Max, however, did not bark, nor did he growl. He just sat there, his body language radiating absolute calm. And then, the real meeting began. The fence was opened, and everyone held their breath. Max did not approach aggressively. He moved with a slow, almost unnatural gentleness for such a powerful dog, and then lay down a few feet away. Leo, sensing the presence of a large, warm body nearby, stiffened. Then, Max did something that astonished everyone. He let out a deep, continuous moan. It wasn't a sound of distress, but a soft, deep rumble, seemingly transmitting reassurance through the ground. That sound, that steady presence, was a language Leo understood. It was a stable heartbeat in his silent world. Slowly, hesitantly, the tiny white lion cub began to grope his way towards the sound, his small paws timidly touching the ground. When Leo finally reached Max, he did not bite or scratch. Instead, Leo pressed his frail, weak body into Max's thick, dark fur and let out the smallest, softest purr the caretakers had ever heard. In that moment, two broken souls found their first moment of peace. The shepherd found his tiny lamb, and the lion cub found his eyes. All tension seemed to dissipate. From a desperate decision, an unlikely friendship was born. That initial connection was not just a comforting moment. It was a fundamental transformation. Max grasped his new purpose with an instinct that transcended all training. He was no longer just a guard dog. He had become Leo's eyes and his emotional compass. The bond they forged was the foundation of Leo's physical recovery. The greatest challenge for a blind animal is spatial awareness. Leo would panic if he moved more than a few steps away from a wall or a familiar corner. Max changed that. He developed an incredible routine, a silent communication that captivated observers. When he wanted Leo to move, he didn't nudge or bark. He simply shifted his body weight, letting the vibration travel through the ground, alerting the sensitive cub. Max taught Leo the geography of their enclosure. He would walk slowly, stop at the food bowl, and gently nudge it with his nose until Leo found it. He guided him to the warmest spots in the sun and always placed his body between Leo and any sudden noises or movements from the outside. Max used his sturdy body as a constant, reliable wall, turning the cub's fearful world into a circle of safety. As Leo grew bigger and stronger, their relationship evolved into a true, playful friendship. The majestic, formerly stern and solitary shepherd began to engage in gentle, clumsy games. He allowed Leo to stalk his tail, then chased him in slow motion, always making sure the cub knew exactly where he was by emitting soft rumbles and the rustling of his fur. The isolation that had nearly killed Leo melted away, replaced by the joyful, energetic vitality of a healthy lion cub. Leo's weight stabilized. His coat became lustrous. The darkness in his eyes remained, but the darkness in his spirit had vanished. This was not just survival, this was thriving. Their story became a profound lesson for everyone at the reserve. The antidote to pain is never isolation. It is always connection. This was not a temporary arrangement. It was a relationship built on a fundamental, shared vulnerability. Max's grief over the loss of his handler, a burden that had rendered him silent and withdrawn, was soothed by the responsibility of caring for Leo. By serving as Leo's eyes, Max was forced to engage, to be present, to use his protective instincts for a truly meaningful purpose. He rediscovered his raison d'etre, not for defense, but for gentle guidance. Reserve staff often spoke of the lessons they learned from the pair. Most importantly, the power of unconditional acceptance. Leo, despite his handicap and his nature as a lion, never hesitated to completely entrust his safety to the powerful German Shepherd. He never tried to assert dominance. He simply trusted. Leo learned to trust not just Max, but the environment Max secured. When Max was near, the cub would confidently explore the grass, the rocks, the low-hanging branches, navigating with assurance, knowing his guide was just a heartbeat away. This complete surrender of control is a lesson for all of us. How many times do we let the fear of the unknown, our own blindness regarding the future, prevent us from moving forward? Leo teaches us that if you can find a reliable connection, a Max in your life, you can navigate any darkness. This bond fundamentally changed the culture of the reserve. It reminded everyone that the deepest wounds are healed not just by medicine, but by being truly seen and accepted by another. People witnessed how true friendship provided a quiet, steady solution to the most complex emotional pain. Two creatures, once images of isolation, became the most enduring symbols of healing at the reserve. Every morning, The sight of the white lion cub curled up next to the dark shepherd was a gentle reassurance that even in the toughest moments, hope, connection, and a new purpose are always possible. Leo is no longer a fading cub. He is a magnificent, healthy, playful, and confident young white lion, despite never having seen the sky. And Max? He is the devoted, proud protector of their small unit, his presence a constant source of calm. As Leo grows, the nature of their relationship continues to evolve. Soon, Leo will be too large and too strong for Max to continue sharing the same small enclosure. Reserve staff are planning for Leo's permanent, larger habitat, where he will eventually be able to live with other rescued lions. This transition will be necessary for Leo's development, but the thought of separating the two friends is heartbreaking for everyone. However, their story is not one of inevitable sadness. It is a story of mission fulfilled. Max gave Leo life. He taught him to trust. He gave him the confidence to be a lion, even without sight. And Leo gave Max a reason to live and love again. Their bond proved that the greatest solutions to despair often arrive in the form of an unexpected connection. It is hoped that the deep, gentle purpose Max found can inspire you. Their story is a powerful reminder that healing is not a solitary journey. Perhaps you feel like Leo, lost and disoriented in a personal darkness. Or perhaps you feel like Max, burdened by a deep grief, thinking your days of purpose are behind you. The solution is always the same. Open up. Seek your connection. Become someone's eyes, or trust someone to be yours. The story of Leo and Max is just one of many touching stories about the power of love that we want to share. We wish to continue bringing you gentle moments, living proofs of resilience and connection, creating faith in life. If you have found comfort and hope in this journey, be a part of our community. Hit the subscribe button now and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next healing stories from the White Lion Reserve and beyond. Your support, simply by subscribing, helps us spread this message to millions. Together, we can ensure that every creature, no matter how lost, can find its way back to the light. The bright morning sun filtered through the old oak trees, casting warm, dappled light onto the Wynwood Wildlife Sanctuary in Oklahoma. For Amanda, a dedicated zookeeper of 15 years, her work had always been a balance of joy and sorrow. But what she witnessed in Leo, a newborn lion cub, defied every rule she knew. Leo was not abandoned by his mother for typical weakness. The lion cub suffered from a rare condition, cerebellar hypoplasia, CH, or wobbles. Even when lying still, the lion cub's small body trembled uncontrollably. When he tried to stand, his limbs staggered, and he lost his balance severely. Leo's heart is strong.
I'm sorry, Leo.
His lungs are good,
The prognosis
but
is
his
not
nerves
good.
cannot send
We're doing
stable
everything we
signals.
can.
The veterinarian explained, his voice heavy. The pride had already rejected Leo, viewing the tremors as an unacceptable sign of weakness. Amanda took Leo into intensive care. She bottle-fed him, kept him warm, and placed him on the softest hay. Medically, Leo received the best care, but his spirit did not. Leo curled up in the corner, his weak blue eyes holding a deep, empty sorrow. He ate, but he did not live. Leo existed, but he lacked the will to survive. Amanda knew the truth. No medicine could heal an isolated soul. Leo needed a connection. He needed a family, a friend. But who could accept such a shaky, unstable lion? Leo's slow decline became an unbearable burden for Amanda. She knew time was running out. Loneliness could kill Leo faster than a disease. He needed a reason to live, someone who would accept his tremors. Amanda spent sleepless nights scrolling through animal profiles, trying to find a compatible companion, but to no avail. Leo was too weak to withstand the competition or aggression of other lion cubs. "We have to do something crazy," Amanda whispered to her close colleague, Mark, during a tense meeting. "He needs someone who won't see him as prey and won't see him as a rival." That was when Milo popped into her mind. Milo was not a resident. He was a small, gentle stray tabby cat who had claimed the office area as his territory. Milo was known for his strange composure. He often napped right next to the tiger enclosure or sauntered fearlessly through dangerous areas. Milo doesn't judge, Amanda thought. He has no concept of predator or prey. Amanda proposed the idea of placing Milo in Leo's enclosure. The room fell silent. The veterinarian was the strongest opponent. Amanda, that's inhumane. Leo is a lion. Even if he trembles, instinct will take over. He will kill Milo immediately. Amanda argued that without a companion, Leo would die from loneliness and depression, and that death would be far more tragic. After hours of intense debate, they reluctantly agreed to give Amanda a chance, provided the interaction was strictly monitored. But Mark, Amanda's colleague, had a unique idea. We need to help Leo accept him. Let's make Milo look more like family. Thus, the Mini-Mane plan was born. They took a soft, light
nice
piece
and
of orange
secure.
gold faux
You
fur
look
and
wonderful,
gently attached
Milo.
it around Milo's
Such
neck.
a brave
The
little
idea
lion.
was slightly ridiculous. The Mini-Mane would hopefully trick Leo's primitive mind into seeing a clumsy mini lion rather than a man. Amanda spent that entire morning preparing, her heart pounding. She held Milo close, feeling the warmth and calmness radiating from his small body. "Be brave, little one," she whispered. The sun rose high, casting bright yellow shadows onto the enclosure. Amanda stood before the metal gate, looking at the huddled Leo, and knew this was the biggest gamble of her career, determining the lives of both creatures. She took a deep breath and unlocked the gate. Amanda gently placed Milo down on the soft hay, a few meters away from Leo, and quickly locked the enclosure door. She retreated to the observation fence, standing beside Mark, both holding their breath. The scene was eerily silent, broken only by the frantic pounding of Amanda's heart. She could feel the tense eyes of her colleagues behind her, all anticipating a tragedy. Leo, the trembling lion cub, lifted his head. His weak blue eyes focused entirely on something other than his own sadness for the first time. He stared at Milo, the tiny cat, wearing the comical faux mane, lying still in the middle of the enclosure. There was no growl, no pounce, only silence that stretched for seconds, for centuries. Leo's hunting instinct seemed paralyzed, or perhaps confused by the Mini-Mane and Milo's absolute composure. Then Milo moved. It was the cat who broke the silence. He stood up with a confident gait, his tail gently swaying. With determined steps, Milo walked straight toward the lion cub. As Milo approached, Leo slowly lowered his large head. His chronic tremors seemed to lessen, replaced by complete concentration. Leo carefully, slowly sniffed Milo. The cat did not back away. He even gently rubbed his small, maned head against Leo's nose. That was when a miracle happened. Leo emitted a husky, weak sound. It wasn't a roar, but a playful, inviting chirp. Then he tried to arch his body in a clumsy play bow, the universal sign of an invitation to play in the animal world. However, due to his neurological disorder, the move looked wobbly and awkward. Milo reacted immediately. The cat jumped up, let out a clear, joyful meow, and pounced on Leo's gigantic paw. The sorrow in Leo's eyes vanished, replaced by pure joy. The trembling lion cub clumsily attempted to reciprocate Milo's action. Amanda burst into tears, her hands gripping the fence. Mark put his hand on her shoulder, his voice choked. He's playing. A lion cub is playing. In the following days, Milo seemed to have officially moved into Leo's enclosure. They became inseparable. Milo taught Leo gentleness. The lion cub learned to control his movements so as not to harm his small friend. They ate side by side, and when resting, Milo curled up on Leo's chest. The deep purr Leo let out when Milo was on him was not a threat. It was the sound of contentment and finding home. This connection worked wonders. Leo started to thrive. Time passed, like the shadows lengthening on the grass. Leo grew quickly. From a weak lion cub, he turned into a sturdy young lion. However, his cerebellar hypoplasia remained. Leo never achieved the stability and grace of other healthy lions. But astonishingly, his tremors seemed to have been regulated by Milo's presence. Their relationship strengthened exponentially. Milo was no longer just a friend. The cat became Leo's physical and emotional anchor. When Leo moved, Milo often walked closely beside him or leaned against his leg. This provided a small counterforce, helping Leo focus and better control his tremors. Milo taught Leo absolute patience and gentleness. When Leo tried to play, even with his significantly increased strength, he was always maximally careful, as if always aware of his small friend's fragility. But as Leo matured, new challenges arose. Leo weighed hundreds of pounds, and Milo was still just a tiny cat. Whispers began to spread among visitors.
Are they supposed to be right there?
When will his instinct kick in? They feared that one day, Leo would forget their friendship and see Milo as prey. The pressure on Amanda and the park management grew. The board of directors held an emergency meeting to discuss separating Leo and Milo. "We must prioritize safety," the board president stated. "This relationship is a miracle, but it is a risk." Amanda stood up to defend. She brought a thick binder of observation logs. "You are looking with the eyes of science and fear," she said, her voice resolute. "But look with their hearts. I have hundreds of hours of records proving Leo doesn't just accept Milo, he protects Milo." She recounted the stories. Leo using his rough tongue to gently groom Milo. Leo hiding his head in Milo during terrifying thunderstorms. And most notably, whenever a stranger or loud noise approached the fence, Leo would always place his massive body in front of Milo, letting out a warning growl. Not for Milo, but for the outside world. Leo has built his social identity around Milo. Separating them now would not be protecting safety. It would be stripping Leo of his soul, Amanda asserted. Ultimately, based on the undeniable emotional and behavioral evidence, the board agreed. Leo and Milo were allowed to stay together. Amanda left the meeting with trembling relief, looking out at the enclosure where the two friends were napping under the sun. She realized their love had challenged not only instinct, but also the rigid rules of humankind. Many years passed. Leo and Milo remained an inseparable duo, becoming the soul of the sanctuary and an inspiration to thousands of visitors. Leo, though still mildly trembling, lived a full and happy life, something no veterinarian had dared to predict. Both aged. Milo's fur was streaked with gray, his steps were slower, and his playful antics became less frequent. Leo, the giant lion, had completely adjusted his behavior to Milo's age. He seemed to understand that his friend needed care and absolute protection. One peaceful autumn afternoon, as the soft yellow light stretched across the hay in the enclosure, Amanda walked in and sensed a difference. Milo was lying in his favorite spot, basking in the sun, but he didn't look up to greet her as usual. Leo was lying next to him, his large head resting close to Milo's small body. Amanda knelt down, tears welling up. She looked into Leo's eyes. Deep fear and sorrow were evident in the lion's blue gaze. Leo gently rubbed his head against her hand, an act of plea and shared grief.
It's okay,
"I know, my
Leo.
son," Amanda whispered,
did so well.
softly stroking both of
I'm
them.
gonna miss.
Milo slightly opened his eyes, his old tail giving a faint, weak flick, and then faded away. Milo passed peacefully right there, curled up on Leo's chest, enveloped by the love of his giant friend and their human mother. Leo's grief was instinctual, the loss of a pride member. He didn't roar, but emitted low, rumbling whimpers that shook his chest. Leo stubbornly refused to leave Milo. He even used his nose to dig a small hole in that exact spot, then lay his face over the hole, as if searching and hiding something. Amanda slept in the monitoring area for 3 nights, just to be there to witness and honor the lion's sorrow. When Amanda collected Milo's personal belongings, she discovered a detail that made her weep. The old, worn foam mini mane, carefully hidden by Leo under a pile of dry hay. It was a testament to the first memory of his companion. Leo lived another 4 years, living more fully and strongly than any medical prediction, all thanks to the will to live that Milo had brought him. Every night, He always slept in the exact position Milo once occupied. When Leo passed away in his sleep, he lay in that very spot, peaceful and no longer trembling. Amanda buried Leo and Milo next to each other, under the single ancient oak tree in the sanctuary. Two simple stone markers, one large and one small, lie side by side forever. Leo and Milo left a legacy greater than their lives. They taught us the connection is not about size or species. It is about presence. It is about choosing to see the soul within, rather than just the instinct. Leo, the trembling lion, lived the most stable of lives, all thanks to a small cat who chose to be his anchor. This story is a reminder. Today, seek out the connection you least expect. Share kindness with someone who seems different, because that small act of connection might just be the saving grace for another's life. If this story touched your heart, hit the subscribe button and share with us in the comments. What unexpected friendship changed your life? The African sun cast a vibrant, fiery orange-yellow glow across the vast savanna, a place where the line between life and death is always razor-thin. Alara, a seasoned ranger, was the vigilant feet of protection in this region. She had a deep, ingrained respect for the brutal laws of natural selection. In her line of work, Alara had learned a core principle: non-interference. The cycle of life and death was nature's way, and sometimes the best action was to stand by and observe. But on one particularly quiet morning, Alara was confronted with something that defied the rules. While patrolling a sector near the northern edge, she noticed an unusual, tiny paw print near a thorny acacia bush, leading to an unnatural, deadly silence. She approached slowly and heard a faint, almost invisible whimper. There, huddled in the meager shade, was a lioness cub. She was emaciated, severely dehydrated, abandoned, and just hours away from death. She looked at Alara with wide, fearful, yet pleading eyes. That gaze pierced through every professional barrier the ranger had built over the years. All the rules shattered in that moment. Alara knew she was about to violate every law. She risked her career and a natural order for this tiny creature. She gently picked up the cub, its body alarmingly light. Alara decided to name the little girl Keto, the jewel. And so began a journey. A choice that went against all the established norms of the wilderness. The decision to save Keto was an impulsive act, but the responsibility that followed was a grueling, tense battle. Alara couldn't take Keto to the official sanctuary immediately due to the long distance, complex procedures, and the risk of infection. She was forced to set up a temporary intensive care unit at her remote outpost. She quickly sterilized the area, equipped it with basic medical tools, and prepared a special milk formula for big cats. Alara understood that the first 72 hours would be everything. Keto completely rejected all care. Despite her weakness,
it's good
the
for
cub
you.
tried to growl and turned away whenever Alara attempted to bottle feed her. The power of the wild instinct was still there, masked by fear. Alara had to contend with severe dehydration, hypothermia, and malnutrition. They were sleepless nights for the female ranger. She was exhausted, but refused to give up. The scene focuses on Alara's infinite patience. She sat by Keto, keeping her warm with cloth-wrapped hot water bottles, gently massaging her to stimulate circulation. Alara was no longer the tough ranger. She had become a mother fighting for her child's life. On the third night, all efforts seemed poised to fail. Keto grew cold and noticeably weaker. Desperate, Alara stopped trying to feed her. Instead, she hugged the cub close, letting her feel human warmth and a heartbeat.
Don't worry, Keto.
She whispered soothing words,
safe here with
promising her she would be okay. Alara had lost hope. She just wanted the cub to know she wouldn't die alone. It was in that very moment that the miracle occurred. Keto, who had been tense and terrified, suddenly relaxed. She leaned fully into Alara, seeking comfort from warmth. Then,
That's it,
Keto
Keto.
slowly
You're
turned her
doing so
head,
well.
sought out the bottle, and began to suckle. A tiny weak purr emerged, not a threat, but the sound of life, acceptance, and trust. Alara had crossed the professional line. Their bond was established in that instant. a lion cub had found her surrogate mother. Alara watched Keto sleep, curled up on one of her jackets. She knew the fight wasn't over, but now she had an ally. Compassion had triumphed over duty, and Keto, the jewel of the savannah, had decided to live. After the initial 72 hours, Keto began to grow at an incredible rate. She quickly transitioned from a frail creature to a clumsy, mischievous youngster. Keto's humor stemmed from the complete contrast between the size of a lion and the behavior of a house cat. Keto had no concept of majesty. She was an extremely ineffective hunter, but a professional sleeper. Alara recounted stories with a tone of loving exasperation. Keto could easily take down a wildebeest if the wildebeest was already sleeping. Keto always sought out illogical places to rest. She tried to squeeze into the tiny cardboard box she used as a cub, tearing the box apart and leaving her massive body hilariously sticking out. In a small cabin, Keto frequently participated in helping with chores, such as lying on Alara's pile of clean laundry or using the area rugs as toys. She also had a particular irrational fear of the vacuum cleaner that Alara couldn't explain. Keto was also a gigantic Velcro cat. She constantly demanded closeness and often lay heavily on Alara when she tried to read or work on the sofa, leaving Alara paralyzed by her work. Alara lamented, "It's over 200 pounds of fur and claws, but I'm not allowed to move because Her Highness is sound asleep." This humor reached its peak when Alara's colleague, Mark, visited the outpost. Mark walked into the cabin and nearly choked on his shock. Keto, now grown, was sprawled out, completely occupying the living room sofa, nonchalantly dangling her paws over the armrest like an oversized house cat. Mark burst into laughter, unable to believe the once fearsome cub now behaved like a pet. However, the lighthearted moment didn't last. Mark seriously reminded Alara, "No matter how funny she is, Alara, Keto is growing too fast. The wild instinct is undeniable. You need a plan." Alara knew Mark was right. Though her love for Keto was boundless, she couldn't strip the lioness of her destiny to become a queen of the savannah. The deeper their bond, the greater the pain of the impending separation. Alara began to understand that the greatest act of love is letting go. Time does not wait for emotions. Keto quickly reached the subadult lioness stage. Her strength and predatory instincts emerged, despite still retaining her funny house cat habits. Now, Keto's playful roughhousing was too vigorous for the cramped cabin space. Alara realized that her love, if retained, would become a punishment for Keto. Alara began searching for the ideal wildlife rehabilitation center, a vast, specialized sanctuary where Keto could learn to survive and live with other lions, not a zoo. Alara knew she had to save Keto from herself. Alara started taking steps to reduce Keto's attachment. She intentionally kept her distance, leaving Keto alone for longer periods, creating complex scent-tracking games and simulated hunting challenges to stimulate her natural instincts. Her inner turmoil was evident in the nights she quietly cried, watching Keto from afar, knowing that every act of distance was a step closer to Keto's freedom. And then the day came. The process of transporting Keto was stressful and difficult. Once Keto was secured in the transport crate, Alara opened the crate door and stepped inside to say a final goodbye. She hugged Keto's massive head, feeling the thick, warm fur. Her tears fell, soaking into the golden coat. She whispered her final words, a wish for a free, strong, and happy life. The truck carrying Keto drove away. Alara stood alone in the cabin, which suddenly felt empty and cold, watching the vehicle disappear into the savannah. She knew Keto wouldn't understand the reason for the separation, but she believed that this act of letting go was the highest proof of a mother's love. Keto had been saved, and now she was on her way to finding her true place in the wild world. A few weeks after Keto was relocated, Alara visited the observation area of the rehabilitation center. She stood silently, watching Keto from a distance. The lioness had now integrated into her pride, learned to survive, and let out her first genuine roar of a true queen. Ilera whistled a familiar tune. Keto turned her head, looking straight at her. She didn't run over, but let out a deep, powerful roar. Not an invitation, but a confirmation of her place and her freedom. Ilera smiled, tears falling. She knew that this separation was the victory of love. Years passed. Ilera continued her work as a ranger, but she was changed. She always kept Keto's old milk bottle as a memento of compassion. She believed that Keto was living the life she deserved. And then the miracle happened. Late one afternoon, Ilera was working at her outpost cabin. She was startled by a familiar roar. She looked out into the yard and saw a small pride of lions approaching. The lead lioness, with the small, unmistakable scar on her ear, was Keto. Keto had returned, and she had brought her cubs. Keto approached the door of Ilera's cabin and gave a small, inviting roar. Ilera recognized the gaze, the look of absolute trust. It was not the look of a wild beast, but the look of an old relative. She did something no one in the reserve would dare. She opened the cabin's large sliding door. Keto, perfectly calm, walked into the house, followed by her cubs. Keto went straight to the old sofa, the spot where she used to sleep as a cub. The lioness jumped up, curling down into a position of complete relaxation. She lay there, allowing her cubs to climb, gently scratch the upholstery, and play on her and the sofa, as if this were completely natural and safe. Ilera stood silently, witnessing the extraordinary reunion. She did not move. Keto lifted her head, looking at her one last time with deep gratitude. She hadn't come back to be a pet. She had returned to prove that love had conquered and life had multiplied. She brought her family to visit their first home, acknowledging Ilera's success. After a few precious minutes, Keto stood up, gently leading her cubs out of the house through the sliding door. Ilera closed the door. She was smiling and crying. Love is not possession. It is planting the seed of life and seeing it flourish. Keto had shown her that her work was successful. Keto's story truly is a miracle. It shows us how fragile the boundary is between the wild and compassion. How do you feel about Ilera's choice? Would you dare to break the rules to save a living creature? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss other inspiring stories about love and life. In the vast heart of the Serengeti, where the laws of nature reign supreme, we often forget that deep down, the needs of the heart are the same for every creature. This is the story of David, a quiet man who walked the thin line between the human world and the wild. And this is the story of Leo, the king of the pride. For years, they shared a deep, silent bond, a friendship forged not by domestication, but by desperate kindness and profound respect. We are not speaking of a pet. We are speaking of an apex predator who had memorized the face of a savior. David's life was a testament to coexistence. But when the wardens suddenly passed away, alone in the stillness of the bush, the wild did not forget. Today, we take you to a moment of rare occurrence, one that defies all belief. It happened during David's funeral procession on a narrow, dusty track. Something magnificent, yet broken, emerged from the shadows to offer a final farewell. A salute that was not a roaring threat, but a deep bow and eternal reverence. David was a man of routine and kindness. He didn't just see wild animals as subjects to protect. He saw them as neighbors. 3 years earlier, he had found Leo, then a young male, clinging to life. Leo had lost a brutal territorial fight. He was severely injured, weak, and abandoned by his pride. In the wild, this was a death sentence. Most rangers would have followed protocol, perhaps euthanizing the animal to prevent prolonged suffering, but David saw a fighter in Leo's eyes. He made a daring decision. He would intervene by not intervening. David camped hundreds of yards away, keeping a respectful distance. Every day, without fail, he left fresh water and safe meat in the clearing. He never tried to pet Leo, never tried to tame him. He simply provided the opportunity for the wild to heal itself. This was not training, it was simple faith in life. The breakthrough moment, the one that cemented their relationship, involved a mortal danger. One afternoon, as David was delivering the meat near where Leo lay, a large black mamba snake began to slither towards the injured, unresponsive lion. Leo couldn't even lift his head. David, armed with only a long stick and fierce determination, acted fast. He didn't kill the snake. He skillfully distracted it and drove it away, saving Leo's life without ever laying a hand on the lion. It was a completely selfless act of protection. Leo survived. He regained his strength. His mane grew magnificent, and he reclaimed his destiny to become a powerful male, the undisputed leader of his territory. Though Leo returned to the true wild, David knew the debt of kindness was noted. Occasionally, at sunrise, David would catch those famous amber eyes watching him from the acacia trees near his cabin, a silent, potent acknowledgement of the man who chose compassion over caution. This unspoken understanding, this spiritual contract, was the core of David's existence. David was the heart of the reserve, a man of routine and quiet strength. He had survived encounters with poachers, aggressive buffalo, and harsh illnesses. But nature's greatest irony is often its most silent blow. David did not fall in a fight. He was subdued by an unexpected, cruel frailty of his own body. He died while on solo patrol, deep in the bush. It was not violence, but the betrayal of his own body. He suffered a massive stroke. The silent attack occurred miles from assistance. When his colleagues found him after a multi-day search, he was resting peacefully in the shade of his favorite baobab tree. In his hand, still gripped firmly, was his worn field journal and binoculars. David had been watching the natural world until his very last breath. He had passed away exactly where he belonged, merged into the wilderness he had sworn to protect. News of his death rippled through the small community like a shockwave. David was not just a ranger. He was a living legend. His funeral was a quiet, solemn ritual, a procession of colleagues, friends, and locals, all grieving the loss of a man who embodied the spirit of the Savanna. The simple wooden coffin was carried by his co-workers along a dusty track, heading toward the ancient grove chosen as his final resting place. The route led straight through the edge of Leo's territory, a path David walked every day. The air was heavy, thick with silent tears and the rhythmic, slow shuffling of boots on the dry earth. They were prepared for the heat, the dust, and the pain of loss. But they were not prepared for the interruption that was coming. They were not prepared for the king to show up and demand his own moment of goodbye. The procession moved slowly, the weight of the coffin matched only by the weight of their sorrow. They rounded a bend on the narrow track where the bush was at its densest. It was then that everything stopped. Without warning, without sound, a huge, majestic figure burst from the thicket. Leo, the massive lion, stood squarely in the middle of the road, head lowered, completely blocking their path. His presence was not merely strong. It was a crushing pressure. He was the embodiment of the wild, untamed danger. The pallbearers froze instantly. Fear, primal and absolute, seized the entire group. This was not a wildlife sighting. This was a confrontation. A few brave men whispered about how to drive him off, but the older members signaled for silence. Leo was not growling. He was not aggressive. His amber eyes, usually burning with predatory intent, were fixed only on the wooden coffin. There was a terrible, beautiful tension in the air. For 2 agonizingly long minutes, man and beast faced each other in absolute silence, locked in a contest of wills. Then, the true purpose of the magnificent creature became chillingly clear. Leo was not there to hunt. He was there to mourn. He took one slow, deliberate step toward the coffin. The group held it close, and then the king of the wild did the unthinkable. In an act of profound solemnity that broke the hearts of everyone present, Leo began to lower his massive body. Slowly, intentionally, his powerful front legs buckled, bringing him to a kneeling position. Then his hind legs followed suit, collapsing his entire enormous frame onto the dusty road. His head bowed in an act of absolute humility and reverence. This was not a stalking posture. This was a purposeful, almost human gesture of supreme respect to the man to whom he owed everything. Leo held the kneeling position, his head close to the ground, for what felt like an eternity. The only sound that echoed in the harsh African heat was a heartbreaking, mournful noise that erupted from his vast chest, a deep, sorrowful moan. It was the sound of genuine lament, not the roar of a wild beast, but the sorrow of a faithful friend who understood the loss perfectly. He was giving his final, eloquent goodbye. When Leo finally rose, he did so slowly, with the same dignity and composure with which he had appeared. He simply turned, quietly stepped to the side of the road, and melted back into the shadows of the acacia bush, leaving the path clear. The entire procession, eyes streaming with emotion, understood. They had been granted permission to proceed. But the story of loyalty does not end there. In the weeks that followed, David's rangers and family often found the large paw prints of the lion impressed on the newly turned earth of the grave site. On multiple occasions, Leo was spotted returning. The proud king of the savannah would not kneel again, but he would lie silently next to David's resting place, his eyes focused on the distant horizon, as if he was still keeping his promise of protection, standing guard for his great friend. The moment confirmed that this bond was not just reverence, but eternal friendship. The story of David and Leo is a powerful reminder. It proves that the deepest forms of loyalty and respect transcend all barriers of language and biology. David's life was a testament to the truth that when you give pure compassion, the wildest of hearts will recognize and reciprocate. The connection they shared was real, and the grief Leo displayed was as vivid and intense. It shows us that animals are not just governed by instinct. They possess an emotional and moral landscape that we are only beginning to discover. This is a powerful reason to believe. Believe in the universal language of kindness. Believe in the incredible capacity for connection that exists all around us, often hidden in the most unexpected places. If a man and a magnificent wild lion can forge an unbreakable bond, what connections are we missing in our own lives? We would love to hear your thoughts on this incredible story. Have you ever experienced an unexpected connection with an animal? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story brought a moment of hope to your day, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more true, inspiring stories of connection, kindness, and the wild heart of the world. In the vast expanse of the Masai Mara, where life operates by instinct, by the sun's heat, and the ancient rhythm of the hunt, stood an isolated research station. This was the domain of Dr. Johnson, a dedicated wildlife veterinarian who had committed his life to this land. He understood this rhythm better than most, a fragile balance of life and death. But on one particular morning, just before the true light of dawn broke, the typical silence was broken, not by the thunderous roar of a predator, but by a far more urgent, more deliberate sound, a persistent, soft thump against the old wooden door. It was 5 a.m. Dr. Johnson stepped outside, expecting a baboon or a stray gust of wind. But the sight that met him brought him to a stop. Standing alone, bathed in the first pale, golden light, was a lion cub. The young male, whom we would later call Leo, was no bigger than a golden retriever and less than 6 months old. Leo's solitary presence was a clear sign of tragedy. And when Leo looked up at him, not with fear, but with a look of desperate, urgent supplication, Dr. Johnson knew this was no accident. This was a plea. This was a small, fragile hand knocking on the door of humanity. The first and most fundamental rule when dealing with top predators is do not approach their young. A lion cub wandering alone near human dwellings usually means the mother is close by, and her protective instinct makes her ferociously aggressive and dangerous, a perfectly justified reaction. But Leo's behavior defied every piece of knowledge and experience Dr. Johnson had accumulated over the years. Leo neither growled nor backed away. Instead, he gently bowed his head, rubbing his nose lightly against the doctor's boot. A gesture as fragile as it was bold, almost a silent pledge of trust. Then he began to walk, but not flee. Leo would take a few steps and
All right,
stop,
Leo.
turning his
I'm right
head to
behind
look
you.
back at Dr. Johnson,
Lead the way.
as if urging him to follow.
They
Dr.
went this
Johnson
way. I
faced
have
a
to follow,
near
even if
impossible
it is
decision.
dangerous.
He was a scientist, trained to be cautious and data-driven. But he was also a man of deep empathy, capable of reading the wild's language. Leo was speaking clearly. "Help me. Follow me." To ignore this plea would be to betray the very purpose of his life and work. He decided to risk everything, stepping out of his area of safety. He carried only a basic medical kit and a profound sense of responsibility. Dr. Johnson moved slowly, deliberately, keeping a safe distance behind the guiding cub. Leo led him off the familiar track and deeper into the dense acacia bush. The distance was nearly 3 kilometers, a significant journey for such a young animal. The trail was riddled with signs of struggle, small, scuffed paw prints, and occasionally a few remaining drops of moisture. Dr. Johnson noticed Leo's incredible stamina. He was not panicked, but intensely resolute. This was not a lost animal. He was a messenger on a critical mission. He realized that this small creature had navigated danger, remembered a safe haven, and acted with an intelligence few would credit in a 6-month-old cub. The story unfolding in his mind was staggering. A lion, a creature governed by pure instinct, consciously sought human intervention. This moment would not be defined by the jungle's roar, but by the quiet, desperate hope carried by a tiny predator. As they ventured deeper, the heat began to rise, and Dr. Johnson felt a mounting anxiety, not for himself, but for the tragedy that lay ahead. He gripped his binoculars, ready to face the consequences of following a broken-hearted guide. This journey was about to reveal the heartbreaking reason behind Leo's silent, early morning petition. Leo finally stopped in a small, concealed clearing, a place that reeked of danger and desperation. Dr. Johnson approached cautiously, using the thick brush for cover. And then, the heartbreaking scene the cub had worked so hard to describe unfolded before him. At the bottom of a deep pit, cunningly disguised by ruthless poachers to capture large game, lay a majestic lioness. It was Leo's mother. The pit was nearly 3 meters deep, with steep, slick sides, making escape impossible. The lioness was severely dehydrated, weakened by exhaustion and struggling, and worst of all, her left front leg was broken at an unnatural angle, confirming a complicated fracture. She was trapped, badly injured, and facing a slow, painful end. But the sheer tragedy was magnified by the subtle details surrounding the trap. Dr. Johnson saw tiny, desperate grooves clawed into the pit walls, Leo's futile attempts to dig his mother out. Even more astonishing were the carefully placed bundles of wet grass and water-soaked vegetation within the lioness's reach. The small creature, driven by pure love, had traveled to the nearby watering hole, saturated the grass, and brought it back to sustain his mother. It was an act of profound dedication, of sacrifice that transcended the bounds of instinct. Dr. Johnson grasped the full heroic magnitude of Leo's actions. He hadn't just stumbled to his door. Dr. Johnson recalled a successful rescue operation he had conducted with the Kenya Wildlife Service team about a month earlier, less than 3 kilometers from this location. Leo, likely hidden in the tall grass, must have observed the strange humans and their powerful machinery helping another animal. In his darkest hour, facing the imminent loss of his mother, he made a complex, rational connection. The humans in the silver Jeep helped last time. I must find them. It was a poignant testament to the intelligence and deep family bonds of these magnificent creatures. Now, the weight of responsibility bore down on Dr. Johnson. This was not just a rescue. It was the fulfillment of a promise made by a silent plea of hope. There was no time for contemplation. Dr. Johnson quickly found a safe vantage point and made the urgent call to the Specialized Veterinary and Anti-Poaching Unit of the Kenya Wildlife Service, KWS. Every passing minute was a life. The heat was intensifying, and the lioness's vitality was fading. It would take hours for the heavy equipment, the mobile crane, specialized cables, and tranquilizers, to reach this remote location. During the agonizing 6-hour wait, Dr. Johnson did everything he could. He installed a small tube to gently provide water into the pit, keeping the lioness hydrated without causing additional stress. Meanwhile, Leo did not leave the area. He sat patiently, a tiny guardian, his eyes locked on his mother, occasionally glancing at Dr. Johnson, a look that shared the silent burden between man and animal. That steadfast presence was crucial. It helped keep the lioness's stress levels low, providing an essential psychological anchor. When a KWS team, led by Dr. James Wanjiku, finally arrived, the clearing erupted in a controlled chaos. This was a particularly dangerous operation. They had to sedate the massive lioness, but not too deeply, as lifting a nearly 200 kilograms predator out of a confined space required careful cooperation. The team worked with surgical precision, digging out the earth on one side of the pit to create a slight ramp, then expertly administering the tranquilizer. The defining moment was the lift, using a custom-designed harness to evenly distribute her immense weight. The crane slowly, meticulously, hoisted the powerful cat out of the earth's grip. As the lioness cleared the pit's edge, a collective sigh of relief went up. She was free. Immediately, the team swarmed in, not just to stabilize her, but to perform complex, life-saving orthopedic field surgery under the blazing African sun. Leo, now safely contained, watched every movement, instinctively understanding that these were the helpers he had traveled nearly 3 kilometers to find. The rescue was only the beginning. The healing was the ultimate goal. With the lioness stabilized, her leg splinted and protected, the team continued to monitor her. The deepest moment came when Leo was released. He bolted immediately toward his mother, nuzzling into her with audible relief and unshakable loyalty. The lioness, though exhausted, responded with soft, reassuring licks. This brief reunion was the emotional core of the entire mission, the beautiful, undeniable reward for Leo's desperate bravery. After the lioness was fully stable following the field surgery, Dr. Johnson and the KWS team had to make a difficult decision. To ensure the complicated fracture healed fully and prevent infection, she needed to be transported to a nearby wildlife rehabilitation center. Releasing her back to the pride immediately was too risky. The team began preparations for her movement. By this time, Dr. James Wanjiku had located the rest of the pride. As they approached the area, the pride male and other members came forward, not in aggression, but exchanging soft growls and nose touches of shared grief. They understood what was happening. They had to accept this temporary separation for the sake of life. And then, the farewell moment. Before the mother was loaded into the specialized vehicle, Leo did something unforgettable. He turned back. He quickly walked a few steps toward Dr. Johnson, who was standing, watching the scene with mounting emotion. The cub stopped, looked him directly in the eyes, and then, with a soft purr, he gently pressed his small head into Dr. Johnson's outstretched hand. It was a conscious, powerful display of gratitude, a silent thank you, a promise of future reunion, before he followed the rest of the pride as they moved away. 6 months later, at the rehabilitation center, the mother was fully recovered. In a carefully monitored operation, Dr. Johnson's team returned her to the Masai Mara region. The moment she stepped out of her enclosure and reunited with Leo and her pride was a triumph not just of medicine, but of perseverance and faith. It was the happy ending Leo had bravely sought at 5 a.m. on that fateful morning. This story is not just about rescuing a lion. It's about what we share. It's about fierce protective love that knows no species and the profound intelligence that can move mountains. Or, in this case, motivated a brave cub to seek help from a complete stranger. It reminds us that every life is valuable, and sometimes the most desperate cries for help are the ones we must listen to most closely. It shows that when we extend compassion, the wild responds with trust. If this story of courage, connection, and hope touched your heart, and you believe in protecting the incredible bonds found in nature, please take a moment to hit the like button. Even better, Join our growing community of wildlife protectors by hitting subscribe. We rely on supporters like you to fund the critical medical supplies and anti-poaching patrols that make complex rescues and rehabilitations like Leo's mother's possible. Check the link in the description to see how your contribution directly helps save a life. Thank you for caring, and thank you for watching. In the vast heart of the Serengeti, where life is never still, the struggle for survival is a ceaseless dance between the rain, the grass, and the millions of migrating creatures. But there is a story that goes beyond primal instincts, a story etched by memory and resilience. It is the story of Aisha, the limping queen who used her intellect to protect the most crucial territory, the Ngorongoro Pass, the key choke point of the Great Migration. Aisha was not strong in the conventional sense. An old leg injury prevented her from pursuing high-speed hunts, forcing her to become a strategist. She taught her only son, Kasai, the most important lessons: reading the migratory herds, the patience of concealment, and how to exploit geographical advantage. The Ngorongoro Pass, with its strategic position by the river, ensured abundant food, proving her wisdom. The bond between Aisha and Kasai was built on a shared understanding of the land's harsh yet fair rules. Aisha's legacy was not a reign of brute force, but a guardianship of intellect. Yet, this very success attracted the covetous gaze of Zara, a young, desperate lioness from the arid north. Zara, seeing only the limp and not the wisdom behind it, believed the Ngorongoro Pass was an easy prize to seize life. Tragedy unfolded at that very life-or-death crossroad. Aisha fought like a mother, but the enemy's absolute power and her exhaustion from the weight of responsibility finally brought her down, and the moment was forever seared into memory. Kasai, a vulnerable cub, was forced to witness his mother's defeat and tragic death before being swept away by the panic current of the migratory herds. He fled, carrying not only fear but the burning image of loss, of his mother's legacy erased in the most sacred place. The Ngorongoro Pass became a symbol of betrayal and an unfulfilled promise. From that moment, Kasai was no longer a lost cub. He was a case waiting to be solved, a ghost adrift on the river of life in the Serengeti. Kasai's exile began on the open plains, where a lone cub rarely survives. This was the Serengeti's most brutal environment, forcing him into continuous movement, merging with the endless flow of the Great Migration under the scorching sun. He was inadvertently shielded by the wildebeest and zebra herds, yet challenged daily by hunger and opportunistic predators. Isolation became Kasai's cruelest teacher. He learned to hunt the smallest of prey, to conceal himself perfectly in the sun-scorched grass, and above all, to master patience in a way a normal cub never would. Hatred was not the primary driver. Instead, it was a cold, quiet determination to survive and return. Kasai carried a pain too profound to express his rage. He chose to transform it into sharp focus. He had to learn to cope with the searing heat of the day, utilizing sparse cover wisely to conserve his strength. His only goal was to survive until he was strong enough to stand still. To stand still at the Ngorongoro Pass, where his mother fell. The memory of Aisha, who used wits to defeat circumstance, became Kasai's sole compass. He didn't just want to reclaim the territory. He wanted to restore his mother's strategic order and legacy. Meanwhile, at the Ngorongoro Pass, Zara had established her new kingdom. The land remained abundant, ensuring her easy hunts, and she had given birth to 3 healthy cubs. Zara lived in comfort, believing the threat of the limping queen was completely extinguished, and the small cub was long dead somewhere out on the plains. However, Zara's dominance was based on force and seizure, not long-term strategy. She grew complacent, forgetting the essential lessons of vigilance on the Serengeti. Ironically, Zara herself now bore a permanent wound, a damaged eye from the battle with Aisha, limiting her peripheral vision. Zara's stability was a false peace, built on a foundation of violence and self-satisfaction. She protected the territory with might, but lacked Aisha's finesse and flexibility to truly manage the Ngorongoro Pass. She did not know that the real threat was not new enemies from outside, but an old case that had been tracking her every move for 3 years. As Kasai reached maturity, his strength began to develop, but he knew physical power alone was not enough to confront Zara. Kasai focused on strategic preparation. He did not opt for frontal assaults. He spent months observing the migration patterns, recognizing Zara's dependence and lack of caution. Kasai understood that to reclaim the Ngorongoro Pass, he didn't need to defeat Zara physically. He needed to defeat her in timing. He planned his attack to coincide with the peak of the next migration surge, a time of maximum chaos and stress, when Zara would be distracted by hunting and protecting the crucial crossings. He had learned that to claim his mother's legacy, he must act like the Serengeti itself, silent, patient, and inevitable. Kasai had become a worthy heir to Aisha's intellect, ready for his return, not as an avenger, but as an architect of order. Kasai did not return to the Ngorongoro Pass as a raging invader. He returned as a phantom, a persistent reminder of the past Zara sought to bury. His plan was not immediate total war, but to dismantle Zara's complacency with tactics and precision. The first attacks were systematic and mysterious, often occurring in the early afternoon, when the intense heat made Zara and her pride lethargic and distracted. Kasai did not hunt for himself in Zara's territory. He only targeted her cubs. The first incident happened on a sweltering noon, when the glare blurred visibility. The next morning, one of Zara's healthiest sons was found dead near the eastern boundary. The bite was that of an adult male, but the body was untouched. It was a cold execution. Zara, stunned by grief and rage, immediately suspected a rogue male seeking to take over the territory. She increased patrols, but focused on traditional avenues of attack. She could not fathom that the enemy was a strategist nurtured by her own past loss. For months later, the incident repeated. Zara's second cub vanished in the chaos of the midday river crossing during the migration. Kasai had utilized the stampede and blinding dust to his maximum advantage. 2 cubs, 2 precise killings, leaving no trail but terror and suspicion. The stability at the Ngorongoro Pass began to crumble. Zara was no longer the confident queen. She was a grieving mother and an increasingly paranoid ruler. She spent time roaring challenges into the open air, seeking a tangible enemy. Her dominance began to erode. Larger prey sensed the instability and started avoiding the area. Most painfully for Zara was the inexplicable dread. She lived in constant anxiety that something supernatural or unbeatable was hunting her family. She could not connect these killings to the past. Kasai had achieved his strategic goal. He had not only physically weakened Zara's family, but had also undermined her psychologically and her ability to lead. The Ngorongoro Pass, once a prosperous haven, was now a place haunted by fear and loss. Kasai's revenge was not a spontaneous outburst, but Aisha's patience, doubled, used against the one who destroyed his mother. Having wrought emotional and strategic devastation, Kasai knew the final moment was at hand. The May migration was about to surge through again, bringing the necessary chaos for the final strike. He had waited 3.5 years, and now, all elements converged. Zara was mentally exhausted, the territory was in turmoil, and the noise of a million creatures would mask everything. He donned the armor of patience and memory. He was ready to step out of the shadows and confront the past directly. He was not just fighting for territory, but fighting to complete the circle of justice he began 3 years ago, right where his mother fell. The final battle took place late in the afternoon, when the golden light was at its brightest and the migration chaos was at its zenith. Kasai used the dust and noise of the herds to mask his final approach. He advanced to the main hunting ground near the river. He did not attack immediately. Instead, he let out a piercing roar through the dust, a declaration held silent for 3 years. Zara bolted up instantly. She saw the large male, his demeanor cold and strategic. But what paralyzed her were the eyes. In those amber eyes, she saw not just an enemy. She saw the small cub who ran away, the reflection of the very death she had inflicted. The battle raged. Zara fought with desperation and brute strength, but Kaysai fought with Aisha's tactics and his own patience. Kaysai did not allow Zara to establish a defensive stance. He used speed and knowledge of the terrain to force her to move, exploiting her visual blind spot to the maximum. The most painful and Kaysai's most brutal strategy was forcing Zara to witness her own tragedy. In the brief lulls between attacks, Kaysai swiftly eliminated Zara's last remaining cub. This was the exact repetition of what Kaysai had suffered years ago. Kaysai did not kill out of blind hatred, but to make Zara feel the emptiness, the powerlessness of watching her legacy erased before her eyes. With the final cub fallen, Zara's fighting spirit utterly collapsed. Kaysai delivered the final blow, his jaws finding her throat at the very spot where she had once bitten his mother. Zara's last roar mingled with the thundering hooves of the migration. Kaysai stood alone on the battlefield, breathing heavily. He was not just the victor now, he was the heir. Then, he performed the final, symbolic act, replicating Zara's action from years ago. He intentionally cannibalized Zara. This act was not out of hunger. It was a powerful, primal statement to utterly erase the trace of that violent reign from the Ngorongoro Pass. As the sun set, painting the Serengeti crimson, Kaysai walked away. He went to the old rock, where Aisha used to lie with him when he was small. He lay down, calm, regal. The saga of the exiled cub was over. He had brought stability to the Ngorongoro Pass. He had become the new king. The story of Kaysai, Aisha, and Zara, set against the ceaseless motion of the Serengeti, unveils a rarely appreciated truth. Resilience is not about overcoming pain, but about using pain as a compass for your life's purpose. Kaysai carried the memory of the Ngorongoro Pass not as a bitter wound, but as a blueprint for his future. His victory was not just a territorial win. It was a tribute to the intellect of his mother, Aisha, who taught him that true leadership lies in strategic patience and the ability to bring stability to the vulnerable. He learned to be fluid like the river, unstoppable like the Great Migration, yet as steady as the land itself. Kaysai's journey challenges us to look again at the complexity of emotion in the natural world and the invisible yet unbreakable threads of family. He was not just an avenger. He was a son who fulfilled a silent vow, restoring the balance of fate. This story reminds us that loss can become the foundation for your greatest strength and clarity of purpose. We are not lions in the Serengeti, but we all face our own migrations, periods of constant change, exhaustion, where we feel lost or threatened. We all have our personal Ngorongoro passes, goals, relationships, or dreams that other forces attempt to seize. Kaysai's composure offers a gentle solution to these battles. He didn't rush his restoration. He spent 3 years mastering patience. He did not fight against Zara's strength. He fought against her predictability and complacency. This is a call to deeper connection. Connect with the source of your resilience. Honor the memory of the sacrifices made for you, and trust that meticulous preparation and right timing are often more powerful than any blind aggression. Kaysai's peaceful reign at the Ngorongoro Pass is a resounding testament to the unbreakable bond between mother and son and the enduring nature of a true legacy. It reminds us that memory is the wellspring of hope, and even devastating loss can pave the way for profound restoration of order. If Kaysai's journey from orphan cub to king of the Ngorongoro Pass resonated with your own struggles for resilience and belonging, please give this video a gentle like. Subscribe to our channel to explore more profound journeys into the wilderness, where animals offer us the most meaningful lessons. Thank you for watching. The midday sun beat down on the Virunga savanna, highlighting patches of golden grass and scattered acacia thickets. The modern asphalt road, a gray scar cutting through the pristine reserve, usually brought only a sense of rush and intrusion. Today, the silence on that road carried a different kind of tension. Sina, the formidable lead lioness, felt the pressure. The prolonged dry season and the constant human presence had made hunting harder for her pride. She needed quiet, she needed nature's deference, but instead, a rank, offensive smell, mingled with a metallic tang and fear, drew her away from her resting spot. The scent emanated from a dark, large, and heavy object that had been crudely dumped into the thicket right by the roadside. Sina approached. She couldn't understand the man-made plastic material, but her instinct screamed that it was wrong, an intrusion that had to be removed. She used her powerful jaws to bite down on the bag strap, bracing herself to pull. Muscles tensing, claws digging deep into the earth, she hauled with a fierce, decisive tug. The black nylon bag, concealing a secret, was yanked out of the shadow of the bush, lying exposed right near the road's white line, under the scorching sun. A deep, resonant roar erupted, not a call for prey, but a warning, a declaration of territory against the foreign object. At that exact moment, Inspector Malia and her white patrol vehicle appeared on the horizon. She was in a hurry, her mind heavy with a critical missing person case she was investigating, a case tied to major smuggling rings. When Malia slammed on the brakes, she was forced to stop before an unbelievable sight. A massive lioness growling, defending a black trash bag. In that moment of confrontation, Malia knew that, in this vast wilderness, an anonymous trash bag had stalled humanity and was holding a secret far greater than anything she had ever imagined. Malia gripped the steering wheel. The patrol car stopped 10 meters from Sina. She turned off the engine, and silence enveloped them. With years of experience in the Special Forces Ranger Corps, Malia knew this was a dangerous stalemate. She couldn't start the engine and drive on, as that might provoke the lioness to attack. Nor could she leave. The missing person case had haunted her all week, linked to large-scale smuggling, and her gut told her that Sina's unusual aggression towards this bag was no accident. Sina stood her ground, growling steadily. Her head was slightly tilted, eyes focused on the bag, then quickly flicking to Malia and the car. Malia recognized that Sina's ferocity wasn't just directed at the bag, but was a general defensive response. She scanned the area, suspecting vulnerable young cubs were hidden in the nearby bushes, making Sina determined not to abandon her position. This feeling doubled the pressure on Malia. She had to protect people, protect justice, and protect the wildlife. Malia pulled out her binoculars, her hands trembling slightly. She meticulously scanned the bag. It was larger than normal, tightly secured with multiple industrial zip ties. On the surface, she saw deep, sharp scratch marks. Sina had clawed and torn at it repeatedly, as if trying to expose or destroy the hateful object. Through the dust, she faintly saw a dark liquid that had seeped out from the bottom of the bag, staining the dry sand. Malia swallowed hard. She knew it wasn't rainwater. Sina's patience finally broke, perhaps stimulated by the prolonged silence of the vehicle, or simply wanting to decisively deal with the nuisance. Sina let out a short, powerful roar. She used her front paw to deliver a strong blow, tearing another large rip across the middle of the bag. Malia tightened her grip on the binoculars. Through that tear, the image that met her eyes froze her heart. It wasn't ivory, nor money, but a patch of familiar tawny brown fur. Then another detail, small yet carrying the weight of the world, emerged. A piece of worn leather collar on which she herself had engraved a name. Tears didn't fall, but Malia's whole world collapsed in that moment. It was Keto. Keto wasn't missing. Keto had been murdered. Malia instantly connected the dots. Keto was a working dog. Keto had disappeared in the context of Malia investigating the large-scale smuggling operation at the ranger station. Keto was killed, not consumed by wildlife, but packaged and discarded like trash. The brutal truth was clear. Keto had found evidence of the smuggling and was executed right within the heart of the ranger station. Malia clenched her fists, her resolve suddenly turning to steel. Now, it was no longer just a case. It was betrayal, it was personal loss. She looked at Sina, the lioness still growling, unknowingly becoming the guardian of the most important evidence. Malia silently swore to Keto and to nature. She would not let this crime fade into the shadows. She had to retrieve the bag. She had to reclaim justice. With the bitter truth about Keto exposed, Malia retreated inside her car, her brain working at full speed to piece together every fragment. She had seen the collar, and she knew what it meant. Keto wasn't killed by a random poacher. Keto was executed by someone he trusted, right within the safety perimeter of the ranger station. Malia immediately thought of Elias. Elias wasn't just a ranger. He was the only one with the authority and access to conceal a murder in that area without detection. Malia recalled Elias's recent supply reports, the skewed figures, the mysterious trips. She had been suspicious, but couldn't believe that the colleague she once respected, the man who had participated in courageous anti-poaching operations, could be the traitor. This betrayal had a massive motive, an international smuggling ring. Malia knew well that the smuggling lords weren't just interested in ivory or rhino horn. They wanted to use the Virunga Reserve as a transit base for a multi-million-dollar cargo waiting to be moved out of the continent. This shipment couldn't move until everything was quiet, and Keto, with his superb sense of smell, couldn't be silenced. Keto had discovered Elias's massive illicit stash, perhaps a secret compartment under the floor, or a false wall in the old storage room. Keto was the only witness who couldn't be bought or intimidated. The truth about Elias was tragic. Malia knew he wasn't born a monster. Elias had been corrupted by overwhelming financial pressure, perhaps a relative's severe illness, perhaps insurmountable gambling debts. The smuggling bosses, with their cunning, found Elias's weak spot and made an offer he couldn't refuse, turning him into a desperate puppet. The act of killing Keto was the final act of desperation, to protect his identity and ensure the million-dollar cargo was safe. Now, Malia looked back at Sina, the lioness still standing next to the hateful bag. She felt the terrible irony. Sina, a symbol of the wild, was enraged by a man-made object carrying death and deceit. By dragging the bag into the light, Sina had unknowingly exposed Elias's crime and acted as a natural whistleblower. If the bag had remained in the bushes, insects and time would have decomposed it, erasing all traces. But Sina didn't allow that. Malia understood that she was not just dealing with a murder case. She was confronting the moral collapse of a person who had once sworn to protect nature. And she had to act immediately. If Elias was watching from afar, if he saw Malia focusing on the bag, he would know his disposal plan had failed. Malia needed to retrieve the evidence before the perpetrator could send someone to destroy it or attack her. Her safety and the success of the case depended on her getting past nature's most powerful gatekeeper. Malia knew that every second that passed put her life and the success of the case in danger. She couldn't call for immediate backup because it would take too long and attract unnecessary attention from Elias, who might be monitoring movement from a discreet vantage point. She had to act alone, and quickly. First, Malia needed to ensure Sina wasn't harmed. She pulled out her satellite phone, contacted the closest ranger team not belonging to Elias's unit, asking them to prepare a high-frequency acoustic deterrent device capable of scaring away wildlife without harm, but demanded absolute secrecy about her location. While waiting for that unofficial support, Malia decided to try the first tactic, distraction. She deployed a small drone equipped for survey photography, maneuvering it to fly in a zigzag trajectory about 50 meters from Sina. The small buzzing sound and the flying image overhead did, in fact, distract Sina. The lioness looked up, her growl shifting to a territorial warning sound against the aerial object. Malia seized the moment. She put on gloves, grabbed a long-handled, specialized hook, and an evidence bag. Opening the car door as quietly as possible, she moved in an arc, crouching low to the ground, maintaining maximum distance from Sina. Cold sweat streamed down her forehead under the fierce sun. Malia felt like she wasn't a police officer, but prey trying to bypass a predator. When she was about 7 meters from the bag, Malia stopped. She could see Keto's shape and wounds more clearly through the tear. The pain almost brought her to her knees, but the will for vengeance held her up. She smelled blood and a faint scent of gunpowder. A crucial detail confirming Keto was killed with a silenced weapon, something only professional smugglers would use, or compromised ranger. Malia extended the long hook to try to pull the trash bag. This action immediately drew Sina's attention. The lioness turned her head, the growl echoing, her eyes blazing with fury. Malia stopped, holding her posture. The two faced each other. Malia's eyes conveyed respect, plea, and absolute determination. "I'm sorry, my friend," Malia whispered, "but this is justice. You've helped me enough." Just then, the high-frequency sound from the secret support team began to emanate from the opposite direction, distant but sufficiently irritating. Sina, caught between the flying object above, the strange noise, and Malia's presence, finally decided to act on her purest wild instinct. Retreat from the incomprehensible. She let out one last roar, turned her back, and quickly ran towards the dense bush, blending into the wild. Malia wasted no time. She immediately used the hook to pull the bag towards her, quickly slashed the bag open with a knife, and transferred Keto's body and all evidence into the specialized evidence bag. She found a small but critical detail: a moss green fiber snagged on Keto's wound, the color of the ranger station uniform. All the evidence was sufficient. Malia got into the car, turned back, looked towards the direction Sina had vanished, and silently thanked her. "Thank you, my witness." Malia drove back to the ranger station, her heart heavy but her gaze firm. She didn't come to apologize. She came to deliver justice. The evidence, Keto's body, the collar, and the moss green uniform fiber embedded in the wound, was enough for her to act. The tragic irony was that Elias, who had killed Keto to protect his identity, had unknowingly left irrefutable evidence. Keto's body was dragged out of the shadows by the very power Elias thought he could manipulate. Malia gathered her team, consisting of those she trusted, who had been briefly informed of the betrayal. They proceeded to arrest Elias right in his office, where he was pretending to review patrol reports. Elias's face turned ashen. When Malia placed the evidence bag on the desk, he understood that everything was over. During the interrogation, Elias's collapse was painful and tragic. He admitted to killing Keto because the dog had barked incessantly and wouldn't stop digging at the hidden ivory stash under his bedroom floor. He admitted being coerced by the big-time smugglers after getting entangled in inescapable debt. What he couldn't believe was the failure of his disposal plan. "A lioness," Elias stammered, his eyes staring into space. "A lioness dragged it out. It's unbelievable." Malia looked at Elias, without pity, only sorrow for a man who had lost his soul. But this victory didn't stop with Elias. The evidence recovered from the trash bag provided a clue about a major, smuggling lord hiding in the city, the one who had funded and armed Elias. Within hours, with a warrant and solid evidence, Malia's team arrested the kingpin, dealing a fatal blow to the large transnational smuggling ring. Keto's sacrifice was not in vain. Sina's intervention brought a monumental victory for justice. After everything, Malia returned to where it all began. The asphalt road was clean, and Sina had moved deep into the savannah with her pride. Malia stood there, commemorating Keto, the friend who fought to the end and was honored by nature itself. She realized a profound truth. We don't just protect nature. Nature, by its instinct and primal force, is also protecting us. Sina had rejected man's crime, adamantly refusing to let deceit lie on her path. This story is the proof. It is the promise. In the fight against greed and destruction, nature is not just a victim. It is our strongest ally. Sina the lioness placed justice on the road's line for us to see. If the story of Sina's roar has touched you, if you believe in the power of the silent heroes in nature, help us spread this message. Please share this video with your friends so the story of Keto, Malia, and the Natural Guardian can spread. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Every subscription is a confirmation that you want to continue listening to moving and inspiring stories about the connection between humans and the wild world. Let's explore more wonderful and meaningful moments like this together. In a world governed by the harshest rules of survival, what happens when instinct meets an innocent mistake? What happens when a predator finds its prey not fleeing, but approaching head-on, seeking an embrace? This is the story that unfolded on the legendary plains of the Serengeti, where the Great Migration, a massive river of life, was surging. Millions of wildebeest, zebras, and Thompson's gazelles created a chaotic yet magnificent tapestry, driven by the call of rain and new grass. Amidst the peak calving season, thousands of new lives were born daily, creating an irresistible hunting opportunity for the predators. At the center of this picture was Callie, a mature lioness, cunning and patient. She was not a symbol of cruelty, but the embodiment of ruthless necessity. The survival of her cubs depended on her success. She stalked the herd's edge, her sharp golden eyes locked onto the weakest calves. And then the moment came. Callie struck like lightning and seized a newborn wildebeest calf. Let's call him Musa. Musa was still wet, trembling, and lost from his mother in the chaos. Callie gripped her prey, preparing for the final blow according to the instinct programmed over millennia. But what happened next challenged every rule of nature. Instead of struggling or crying out, Musa, barely able to stand, staggered toward Callie. He rubbed his tiny, vulnerable head against the lioness's mane. He sought warmth, protection, and in a moment of absolute innocence, mistook the predator for his protector. Callie paused, her jaws slightly parted, and instead of clamping down, she lay still. For one silent minute, the most dangerous place on earth suddenly became the safest. The still image of Callie and Musa was a tiny, momentarily forgotten dot amidst the wild symphony of the Serengeti. To understand the strangeness of that moment, we must look at the immense flow surrounding them, the Great Migration. The Great Migration is not just a journey, it is the breath of Africa. Millions of animals, moving according to an ancient schedule, form a vibrant river, pouring toward the northern pastures where the rains have sown the seeds of hope. Every wildebeest is a cell in that giant body, and they move tirelessly with a single purpose: survival. The calving season is the climax of this collective survival strategy. Thousands of pregnant wildebeest mothers coordinate their births in an extremely short time frame, just a few weeks. It is a cruel trade-off. By creating a feast that is too large and too fast, they ensure that no matter how greedy the predators are, they cannot consume them all. The chaos of new life is the collective shield. In this context, Callie was operating according to the rules. She was an essential link in the food chain. She did not hunt for pleasure, but out of responsibility. Her cubs, waiting under a bush not far away, needed protein to grow and one day continue the cycle. Her hunger was a biological imperative, the driving force behind every action. Musa was a product of that survival strategy. He was born in a rush, pushed away from his mother in the chaos of the herd. His eyes had not fully adjusted, and his world was a blur of colors and movements. His instinct was a simple but powerful program: seek the warmth, the height, and the scent of safety. And so, Musa fled the terrifying loneliness, running toward the tall, warm body he sensed first: Callie. Musa did not recognize danger. He only recognized need. The desperation of being lost short-circuited his ability to recognize an enemy. Musa was not looking for a protector. He was only looking for his mother. This collision was not just between predator and prey. It was a clash between Callie's brutal reality and Musa's absolute innocence. This makes us reflect. In our own lives, do we ever, in desperation, run towards an unhealthy solution or protector just because it offers initial warmth or a sense of security? Necessity sometimes distorts our perception, and this moment between Callie and Musa exposed that truth most honestly. In a non-stop cycle of the Serengeti, Callie must be the sharp blade, not allowed to hesitate. But Moose's innocence forced that blade to stop, if only for a single breath. In that moment, the outside world seemed to stop spinning. The sound of hooves and the cries of the gazelles seemed to vanish. Only the unusual silence between Callie and Musa remained. Callie, a hardened hunting machine, was paralyzed by an inexplicable behavior. She was not the only witness. A vulture circled above, and a nearby hyena paused its lurking. All waited for the inevitable, Musa's end, but did not come. Instead, Musa, completely unaware he was leaning against the scythe of death, fully leaned into Callie's warm, rough body. He found absolute security, and that very innocence, that lack of fear, disarmed the predator. Callie's instinct was programmed to react to struggle and fear. But Musa offered no signal of threat or fear, thus failing to trigger her killing response. In Callie's golden eyes, something shifted. Was it a faint memory of her own cubs? Of the vulnerable infancy she once protected? Or simply astonishment at an unprecedented situation? We cannot know exactly, but her hesitation was real, a small crack in the cold, steely shell of her instinct. This moment of strange peace was a tremendous cost to Callie. It went against every rule she had learned. Don't play with the prey. Don't waste time. Hunt, eat, and move. Yet she lay there, accepting Moose's closeness. We can see a subtle parallel with the human experience. Our modern life is full of quick reaction instincts. The instinct to judge, the instinct to criticize, the instinct to react angrily when challenged. However, sometimes we encounter a situation where another person's vulnerability, innocence, or absolute sincerity makes us stop. What we call compassion is often not a grand emotion, but just a small moment of pause before our automatic reaction. Callie's pause was an extraordinary act of non-reaction. It proved that even the most primal instincts can be interrupted. The riddle is not why Musa approached her, but why Callie allowed it. Within the heart of the predator, a silent battle was raging. Outside was stillness. Inside was a struggle between a growling hunger and the strange feeling brought by Moose's innocence. She had to wrestle with the thought, this is my meal, but this meal trusts me. But the Serengeti does not wait. Its laws are unforgiving, and hesitation is not a long-term option. This interruption had to end. Stillness is never permanent in the Serengeti. Callie and Moose's strange moment of peace did not last long. From the horizon, a fierce, steady sound began to spread. The drumming hooves and the lowing calls of the great wildebeest heard on the move. The Great Migration was passing by. This was the lifeblood of the plains, the source of life and the cause of all conflict. The arrival of the migration acted as an electric shock, pulling Callie out of her temporary paralysis. She took a deep breath. The scent of dust, sweat, and the fresh flesh of thousands of creatures simultaneously flooded her sense of smell. The hunting instinct, which Musa had interrupted, was now powerfully reignited. This was no longer just a single prey, but an unlimited feast flowing right past her. The weight of responsibility, the need to feed her cubs, her own hunger, crushed the momentary confusion. Biological necessity won over curiosity. Callie stood up. It was not an act of violence or anger, but a simple, cold shift. She shook off Musa gently, but decisively. She did not look back. All her attention, her focus and purpose had returned to the surging migratory flow. Callie was back to being the hunter. Musa was left alone on the grass. The warmth was gone, replaced by the coldness of the plain. Now, true fear arrived. He was lost, confused, not understanding why his protector had left. But this solitude was also an opportunity. Musa heard a distinct cry, not a roar, but the call of his own kind, perhaps his mother's. Instinct, which had misled him once, now guided him again, this time in the right direction. Amidst the dust and pounding hooves, a second miracle occurred. In the chaotic flow of thousands of animals, the mother wildebeest found her calf, or Musa found his mother. Both quickly recognized each other through their unique scent. Musa was nudged, pushed into the moving herd, merging into collective safety. Callie had successfully hunted another prey from the migration, satisfying her hunger. Order was restored. The sun began to set. The moment of crossover, where the predator's instinct was paused by the prey's innocence, had ended. Musa survived, thanks to his innocence and Callie's distraction. As for Callie, she returned to her hunting life, carrying a strange ripple in her memory of a voluntary meal she had passed up. This story teaches us, in life, external chaos is often the most powerful force to end our moments of stillness and internal struggle. The sun dipped below the Serengeti plain, painting the sky with warm streaks of orange and purple. Everything was back in its rightful place. The wildebeest continued to migrate. The lions continued to hunt. Life and death resumed their relentless cycle. The story of Callie and Musa is not a fairy tale of impossible friendship. Callie did not become Musa's foster mother, and she quickly returned to her survival role. However, it is a story about possibility. The possibility that even the most primal and powerful instinct can be interrupted, if only for a minute. It was a minute of compassion, a minute of innocent confusion, and that 1 minute saved a life. In our modern world, we too are living amidst our own great migration. The rush of work, the pressure to always react, the constant growl of notifications and expectations. Like Callie, we are programmed to react quickly and efficiently. Our instinct is often to judge, criticize, defend, or rush. And here is the great lesson from the Serengeti. Empathy is not a grand emotion, but a simple act of pausing. We call it the Callie pause moment. When you're provoked by a comment on social media, an annoying email, or an unintentional remark from a loved one, your instinct is to react, to attack, to defend. That is the call of necessity growling within you. But you can choose the Callie pause moment. Before you hit send on an angry email, pause. Before you make a harsh judgment about someone else's decision, pause. Before you let self-critical thoughts defeat you, pause. That pause is an act of courage because it allows you to step outside the instinctive script, just as Callie did. It allows for an innocent Musa, perhaps the other person's vulnerability or your own patience, to have a chance to find the light. The pause moment does not have to transform you into a completely different person. It only needs to give you 60 precious seconds to choose a response instead of a reaction. Like the calf, our survival often depends on finding safety in chaos. And sometimes, that safety comes from another person choosing a minute of compassion over necessity. In the great migration of your life, remember the lioness on the Serengeti plains. Even the most determined predator allowed innocence to interrupt its instinct. Let this story remind you, the greatest power often lies in the ability to not act immediately. If this story has touched you, share your thoughts. Have you ever had a Callie pause moment in your life? A time when you chose stillness over instinct, compassion over necessity? Tell that story in the comments section below. Let's build a community where we celebrate the power of the pause together. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss the next stories, the ones that remind us of the incredible connections that exist even in the most unexpected places. The African sun blazed, turning the tall grass golden. Yet the scene at the foot of the hill was anything but peaceful. It was a stage of pure desperation. Maya, a young mother elephant, was panting, her eyes wide with terror. Weeks ago, she had given birth to twins, a rare and fragile miracle. Of the two calves, one, Keto, was stronger, while the other, smaller and slightly weaker, was named Braveheart. But the miracle was under direct threat. A pride of lions, like shadows slithering through the grass, had cornered the family. Brutal instinct dictated a cruel truth to Maya. To save one, she might have to let go of the other. She desperately nudged Keto away with her trunk, urging him out of harm's way, while Braveheart stumbled, drawing the lion's attention. The tension peaked, just as the first lion lunged, and Maya let out a choked, desperate trumpet, a copper-toned surrender from her struggling calf. We pause. In the wild, motherhood is a covenant sealed by sacrifice. But what happens when a sacrifice is too great, too agonizing? In this moment, Maya faces an impossible choice, one that shatters the heart of the savannah. But sometimes, when hope seems extinguished, a different kind of protector intervenes. This is the story of how one act of quiet courage changed the outcome of an ancient rule, and why every life, no matter how fragile, deserves a fighting chance. The scene continues, but the crisis is not yet over. The lions are closing in on Braveheart. The calf Maya seemed to have resigned herself to losing to ensure the safety of Keto, the healthier calf she was urging to flee. Maya's action was not coldness. It was a brutal, primal calculation aimed at preserving the family's future. Dust flew as Maya tried to shield Keto from the lions, creating a desperate distraction, her heart torn in two. The fact that Braveheart was several weeks old made the decision even more agonizing. He was not just a newborn, but a developing life, deeply bonded to his mother. Meanwhile, perched on a ridge overlooking the waterhole, sat Elias. He was a veteran ranger and former reserve warden, a silent observer who understood the delicate balance of nature. Elias had witnessed tragedy countless times, knowing that intervention could sometimes do more harm than good. His eyes were glued to the scene through binoculars, every desperate movement by Maya etched into his memory. He saw Braveheart, exhausted, dehydrated, and nearly collapsing, encircled by the younger, more daring lions. The moral pressure weighed heavily on Elias. Deep in his mind, a struggle began. He felt the pull between the rule of conservation and the call of compassion. Should I interfere and break the natural law, or stand by and watch the inevitable pain? He closed his eyes for a second, picturing Maya's anguish at losing a calf that was already weeks old. His hand hovered over the radio, then dropped. He knew the rule: minimum intervention. But the sight of the mother's anguished split, her heartbroken trumpeting echoing across the plain, had crossed a line. This was not just the cycle of life. This was an unnecessary loss of a rare twin, a fatal blow to a small elephant family. He noticed the oldest, most aggressive male lion approaching to finish off the isolated Braveheart. Elias made his decision. It was a quiet resolve, not a rushed, dramatic action. He quickly grabbed his equipment, not a weapon, but a non-lethal deterrent kit, and started the patrol vehicle, his intention not to harm, but simply to shift the balance of that single moment. He understood that true compassion is sometimes not letting nature take its course, but creating a brief, crucial window for a fragile life to continue its fight. He reminded himself of his purpose: protection. The line between observation and action is often blurred by compassion. Elias chose to cross it, not as a conqueror of nature, but as a temporary shield. His intervention was about to test the limits of human presence in the wild. Elias's well-maintained white SUV began its slow descent toward the conflict zone. He didn't speed. High velocity suggests aggression and panic, which could provoke the lions to attack the very calf he intended to save. His approach was calm and calculated. The sound of the engine, a low, steady rumble, was the first disruption. The lions, focused on their prey, looked up, irritated by this mechanical intrusion. This was exactly what Elias wanted: to break their concentration without causing a fight-or-flight reaction that could endanger everyone. He used his first tool, engine noise, stopping the vehicle about 100 meters away, a clear sign of human presence and an immediate warning. Then, he employed the second, non-aggressive technique. He activated a series of bright, flashing LED lights mounted on the roof of the white SUV, directed away from Braveheart, but toward the lion's vicinity. The light was not blinding, but startling, a confusing, modern presence that disrupted the traditional hunting environment. The younger lions, already spooked by the noise, hesitated. They were wary of the unpredictable human element. The largest male lion, however, was not so easily deterred. It let out a deep growl, asserting dominance. Elias remained still, calm, projecting non-hostility, but holding his ground. He reached behind him and grabbed a flare gun. He aimed high into the sky, upwind, and fired a non-incendiary flare. A sudden whoosh, followed by a bright streak that soared high and burst into a large, vivid red blob in the sky, far from the pride. This startling flash and small pop was an event utterly alien and terrifying to their environment. This was the final psychological weapon. This chain of surprising, non-lethal signals achieved its goal. It told the lions that the risk-benefit calculation had changed drastically. Braveheart was no longer an easy meal. An unpredictable, bizarre factor had intervened. The lions, sensing that an easy meal had turned into a complicated, potentially dangerous standoff, began to reluctantly retreat. They are opportunists. This opportunity had now become too troublesome. Maya, the mother, witnessing this sudden, strange shift, trumpeted in confusion, but also with a surge of hope. She quickly turned back, seeing the lions depart, and rushed toward her struggling Braveheart. The intervention was complete. The lions were gone, but the immediate crisis was over. Now, Elias faced his next, and perhaps most important, challenge, earning the trust of the very family he had just saved. As the immediate threat dissipated, the savannah grew quiet again, leaving only the elephant's heavy breathing and the small engine noise of Elias's patrol car. He kept his distance, understanding that his presence, however helpful, was still a significant stressor. The most critical moment now was the elephant's family reunion. Maya moved to her struggling calf, Braveheart. The calf was weak, dehydrated, and trembling, but he had cheated death. Maya caressed Braveheart with her trunk, an obvious, emotional release washing over the scene. Braveheart managed a few wobbly steps, and Keto, the stronger twin, also rushed back to nudge his sibling gently, a small but profound act of familial support. Elias, watching through his windshield, allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He hadn't fought the lions. He had simply provided a precious chance for the family to reconnect and survive. Elias knew the calves needed sustenance and rest, not further disturbance. He slowly, deliberately backed his vehicle away, maintaining a steady pace and non-threatening posture. He left behind two essentials: fresh water poured into a natural rock depression he had spotted earlier, and a sense of safety. Elias watched intently the moment Maya finally relaxed. Her ears slightly flared, her tense muscles eased, and she began leading both Keto and Braveheart toward the water source and deeper cover in the nearby acacia scrub. She paused and looked directly at the receding vehicle. It was a knowing, ancient look, perhaps not of gratitude, but of recognition. She understood that a temporary shield had been offered. The narrative emphasizes that the true heroes are Maya's strong maternal instincts and the calves' will to live. But Elias's presence was the critical catalyst. The fact that the twins were several weeks old and showed sibling bonding made this reunion deeply moving. This was what Elias was protecting, a fragile ecosystem where even a single life can be a cornerstone for the future. The message was clear: human intervention, when born of respect and minimal force, can sometimes be a positive force for conservation, rather than just a disruption. The family was safe for now, but survival is a daily commitment, and the true emotional reward lies in their quiet resilience and the connection we share with their struggle. We return to Maya, Keto, and Braveheart several weeks later. The sun is setting, painting the sky in soft oranges and purples. Braveheart no longer stumbles. He walks confidently beside his mother and twin. Keto, his spirit restored, his future secured by that single moment of intervention. The scene radiates peace and resilience. The story is not just about a rescue. It is about the power of compassion to rewrite a sorrowful ending. The wild is a place of harsh truths, but it is also where kindness can bloom unexpectedly. Elias, the quiet ranger, didn't save the calf with a dramatic shot or a loud chase. He saved him with a gentle rumble, a careful flash of light, and the courage to act when his heart told him the scales were tipped unfairly. His action reminds us that conservation is not just about fences and regulations. It is about the human connection to the non-human world. The emotional reward is deepened as we hear Elias share his personal philosophy. Every life I protect is a piece of the story I want to tell. Every little calf, every quiet victory adds a chapter of hope to the Savanna's chronicle. Braveheart's survival becomes a symbol of hope, a living testament to the possibility of a benevolent coexistence between humanity and the wild. Keto and Braveheart now move as a unit, fiercely protected by Maya. Their initial struggle now serves as a powerful foundation for their resilience within the herd. You may feel thousands of miles away from the African savanna, but this connection and the spread of this hope are boundless. If you believe Keto and Braveheart deserve a future, and that these quiet conservation efforts need to be known, we need your help. This is a story of second chance. Let's make sure these inspiring stories of survival, compassion, and gentle intervention go viral. If this story has touched your heart, and you believe that quiet strength can rewrite sad endings, please hit the subscribe button to not miss the next stories full of hope. And don't forget to share this video to spread the message of resilience and kindness. Together, let's keep this flame of hope burning brightly.